Simon & Schuster Audio presents What Women Want Men to Know, the ultimate book about love, sex, and relationships for you and the man you love, by Barbara Angelis. Read by the author. I'd like to start with a message for women. I've made this program for you and for the man you love. I believe that it's a program every woman has always wished existed, one she could give to her mate that would effectively explain all the things she wanted him to know about loving her. Listen to this, she would say, and you'll understand me. How many times have I myself wished for such a program? Times when it was clear that once again, I'd failed to successfully convey my needs to my partner. Times when, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't convince him that if he only would make one small gesture or handle a situation a little differently, things would be so much easier between us. In these and so many other moments I'd sigh, as all women have undoubtedly sighed for thousands of years, and wish there was some way I could get through to him, some way to make him understand. If you're a woman listening to this, you know this sigh well. It's the sigh that whispers, I just want him to care enough to see who I really am. It's the primal need to be known, to be valued, to be accepted just as you are. Of course, we've all tasted this experience of another soul truly knowing ours. Ironically, it's the bond we have with other women, our girlfriends, our sisters, our colleagues, where the very kind of deep comprehension of who we are and what we're trying to say happens effortlessly and almost instantaneously. Listen to this story. Does it sound familiar? You're sitting across from a girlfriend at lunch, and early on in the conversation you start to explain a problem you're having in your relationship or something your mate did that upset you. Within moments of your initial remarks, your friend seems to understand exactly what you mean. She nods her head sympathetically, shows concern for all the right issues, and even finishes your sentences with the perfect words. And as you look at her gratefully, something inside you sighs with relief and exclaims, "Yes, that's exactly how it is. You know just how I'm feeling." The conversation continues, and within 10 minutes, you and your girlfriend have agreed on solutions to a whole list of issues that you and your husband have argued over with no resolution for 10 years. As you finish your lunch, you thank your friend for being so supportive. And then you say the words that at some point we've all found ourselves saying to other women in our lives. If only my husband could understand me like you do. It's too bad that you're a woman. Otherwise we'd be perfect for each other. And your friend nods in agreement, for once again, she understands exactly what you mean. After countless experiences like that, after decades of working with men and women, trying to help them understand one another, it was time for me to write What Women Want Men to Know. This program's my response to these requests for help from both sexes. It presents all the things women wish men knew about understanding us and loving us. Its intention is to invite men to see and understand women as they never have before. I have a reputation for kind of knowing how to get through to my male readers, students, and seminar attendees, and I worked really hard here to express information in a way I hope men will really hear. You see, I understand how difficult it is for men to go where we want them to go emotionally, to open up to the kind of intimacy we crave, and to understand the heart and soul of women. And it's out of that love and compassion that I approach working with men, and it's out of that love and compassion that I've made this program. The harsh truth is this: just because men love us does not mean they can know us. They inhabit a very different world than we do, and as you'll hear throughout this program, our world often appears mysterious, confusing, and contradictory to them. I think this is why often even the best-intentioned man who deeply loves his partner appears to simply not persist at trying to understand her. To put it bluntly, many men just give up. Not because they don't care, but because they feel they're certain to fail at gaining any glimmer of true cognition of our complex nature. And since men don't like failing, they often opt for not trying at all. I wrote what women want men to know, to make it easier for men to try to succeed at understanding and loving us, to make them better boyfriends and better husbands, better companions and better lovers. And I made this program to make it easier for you to succeed at expressing your needs, explaining your nature, and sharing your heart with the man you love. What women want men to know will reveal to you and to the men who hear it that there are intelligent, loving reasons behind all the things you do and feel as a woman. There's a reason we call a man 5 times until we get through, a reason we feel terrible when he shuts down and we keep trying to find out what's bothering him. And the reason is not that we're neurotic or weak or insecure. The reason, simply put, is that we are women. And what drives us and defines us is uniquely different from what drives and defines men. Our needs and behaviors as women only appear to be mysterious or confusing when we don't understand our true nature. This is one of my purposes in making this program, so that as women we can understand ourselves more and judge ourselves less, and so that we can honor and celebrate our unique capacity to feel deeply. When you have this kind of confidence and deep comprehension of yourself as a woman, you will have a much better chance of being able to communicate your needs and emotions to the man in your life. Now, of course, this still isn't a guarantee that you'll always get the response you want, but at least you'll have an advantage in that you will be able to give men something they appreciate and feel comfortable with when addressing a problem, a logical explanation. Throughout this program, I've not only detailed what women want regarding love, intimacy, communication, and sex, but why we want it, why it's important to us, why, because of who we are as women, certain kinds of behaviors from our male partners fulfill our most profound and essential needs. And see, these explanations are just as important for you to understand as they are for men. And the information you'll gain will make it much easier for you to successfully communicate with the person you love. So before you give this program to the man you love, please listen to it and understand it first for yourself. The information in this program was compiled from a combination of sources. The majority comes from several decades of working with tens of thousands of women and hearing what they wish men knew about them. I've also added my own experiences from relationships into the mix, along with those of my close friends and acquaintances. In addition, I include hundreds of responses from a questionnaire I distributed to women over the past year. Still, with all this input, the bottom line is that all things don't apply to everyone. I'm just trying to communicate what I've heard and learned over the years, without being accurate to everyone. So take what feels right and valuable for you, and don't worry about the rest. I hope this program will be everything you want it to be. I hope that after hearing it, you'll love and honor yourself more and judge yourself less. I hope it will open the doors of clarity and communication between you and the man you love. Most of all, I hope it brings you many steps closer to creating the kind of loving, fulfilling, and passionate relationship you've always dreamed of. Now I'd like to say a few words to men. What if I told you, by doing a few simple things, you could get the woman you love to stop acting in some of the ways that drive you crazy? What if you knew some magic words to say that would work in seconds to make a woman feel like you were the most wonderful mate she could ever imagine? What if I taught you some secret techniques that would make your partner want to have more sex with you? Do I have your attention yet, guys? Does any of this sound interesting? If so, you've come to the right place, and you're listening to the right program. First, let me alleviate any suspicions you may have, and say from the start that this program is not a thinly disguised condemnation of men, explaining how everything's your fault. I wrote what women want men to know to help you feel more successful, more powerful, and more in control of your love life. I wrote it so you could have more of the things you want in relationships and less of the things you don't want. This is a program written specifically with you in mind, to make your life easier. I've spent the past 20 years working with tens of thousands of people, and about half of them men. Men of all ages and all backgrounds have opened up and shared with me what frustrates them in their relationships, what confuses them about women, and what they want in the areas of love and sex. and I've been listening carefully. And I've heard men tell me that they want to feel successful in their relationships, like they're doing a good job and not messing it up. And they want less hassle, stress, and drama. They also want frequent and passionate sex with their partner. So this program's designed to help you achieve these goals. How? By understanding more about why women are the way they are, and learning some simple, practical ways you can communicate with us and relate to us that will make you and your partner happier and more satisfied in every way. Now I have some really great news for you. You know all the stuff you hate about how women can get, guys? Our neediness, our clinginess, our insecurities, the feeling you have that no matter how much you do or give, it's never enough for us? Well, I want you to know that so much of this is avoidable. Perhaps a woman's tried to say to you, if only you would do X or Y, it would make such a huge difference. And you've thought to yourself, yeah, right. But I'm here to tell you that this is the most important secret about women you will ever discover. When you learn just a few simple things to do and say to the woman in your life, you'll prevent her from having the very kinds of emotional reactions that you hate. Does this sound too good to be true? Well, it isn't. I wrote What Women Want Men to Know to offer you the kind of information you need, presented logically, clearly, and to the point, for creating the kind of relationship with a woman that is fun, enjoyable, satisfying, and much less work than you could ever imagine. Educating yourself about what's important to you is a way to make yourself more powerful as a man, not less powerful. In other areas of your life, you probably find it easier to be open and learn and improve yourself. For instance, you'd never be defensive or reluctant about reading the manual for your new car or your new VCR or your new cell phone. In the same way, if you had to make an important presentation for work to a new client, you'd want to learn everything you could about him, right? And his company, to ensure that you'd make a good impression. You'd never say to your boss, I don't need any help figuring out what to say. Stop telling me what to do all the time. You know where I'm going with all this, right? Your intimate relationship is your most important and valuable investment, guys. The more you learn about women and about love, the better you'll become as a husband or lover, and the more control you'll have over your love life. As you already know too well, men and women are really different. And the truth is that as women, we don't always understand ourselves either. And if we can't figure out why we're the way we are, how in the world can we expect you to understand us? As you'll hear, What Women Want Men to Know wasn't just written for men in order to help you understand women. It was written to help us as women understand ourselves, so we can communicate more precisely and more effectively with you in ways you can actually hear us. If you're in a relationship, I strongly suggest you discuss the material in this program with your partner. Ask her if a particular point accurately describes her feelings. Invite her to comment on what I say or what other women said. And let her know what specific suggestions you'd be willing to try, and ask if these would make a difference to her. Having these kinds of discussions will give you much valuable information about your wife or girlfriend. You'll also find these conversations effortless and stress-free, compared with ones you've had in the past, because you'll both be able to start your dialogue from the common ground of this program rather than just your own opinions. Your dialogue will feel less adversarial and more like you're both on the same side. Best of all, your partner will love it that you're showing interest in her feelings, wanting her input, and that you care enough to ask. I need to take a moment and say what this program is not about. It's not about deeply wounded women with severe emotional problems who've shut down their feelings, suppressed their needs, and cut themselves off from their hearts. If you're presently or have been with a woman like this, you may find that nothing I say about how women behave applies to her. That's because in order to defend herself from further pain, she's built walls of protection around herself and detached from her ability to feel. Men who make a habit of choosing emotionally unavailable women will be unable to relate to much of what I say, and if you suspect you might be in that category, consider reading my book, Are You the One for Me?, which will help you understand more about the patterns that prompt you to end up in unhealthy relationships. Now I have a confession to make. I made this program secretly hoping that my own partner would drink in each word and digest every bit of information about me as a woman. I hoped he would enthusiastically try out every suggestion and explore each technique, intent on doing all he could to become the man of my dreams. If your wife or girlfriend gave you what women want men to know, guess what? She's secretly hoping the same thing that I am. But I'll confess another secret. If my sweetheart only takes a few important things from this book, it would be enough. I'll be grateful that he was committed enough to try to understand the tenderness of my heart, and that he cared enough to consider ways in which he could make me feel more safe, more valued, more loved. Guys, your woman feels the same way. If by listening to what I offer here, you learn to appreciate her a little more fully and love her a little more sweetly, she'll be happy, and it will be enough. Thanks for trusting me to take you on this journey into the heart and soul of a woman. I promise you, it will be worth it. I want to begin with an admission to men on behalf of the women you love and the women who love you. We want men to understand us, to truly grasp why we are the way we are, why we need the things we do. And we feel frustrated and upset when it appears you don't understand us. But the truth is, and here's the admission, we don't always fully understand ourselves either. Why is it, for instance, that at one moment a woman can seem to be so strong and competent, and the next so fragile and insecure? Why do we seem to require more time, attention, and reassurance from men than they require from us? Why are we the way we are? We know men ask themselves these questions about us, and whether we readily admit it or not, we have the same questions about ourselves. Well, the good news is that there are answers, reasons that as women we feel what we feel and do what we do. And I'll be sharing the answers to these questions, and they are meant to enlighten women as well as men. Allow me for a moment to take you into the heart of a woman, and through the following story reveal our own struggle to understand ourselves. Your husband has left on a business trip. When he arrives at the airport in his destination city, he calls briefly to check in and let you know he's going out for dinner with a client. That night, as it's time for bed, you lie there waiting for the phone to ring. You try his hotel room a few times, but you get no answer. You leave several messages, and you wait, but he doesn't call. By now it's 2 a.m, and you're really anxious and worried. Where could he be? Why hasn't he called you? What could keep him from wanting to say good night to you? You finally fall into an uneasy sleep. The next morning you get up feeling hopeful, expecting to hear from your husband, but still nothing. You try to make excuses for him, but you're having a really hard time convincing yourself. If he was really tired last night, he could have at least called this morning. As the hours go by with no word from him, your worry turns to paranoia, and your mind proceeds to parade its worst fears before you. Maybe something's really wrong, you imagine. Maybe he got sick. Or maybe he's deliberately avoiding me. And then the worst fear of all. Could he be there with another woman? Finally, that evening your husband calls, and to your great surprise, acts as though everything is fine. Why didn't you call me last night or this morning? You ask in an anxious voice. I was so worried. He answers, I just talked to you when I arrived, and after dinner I was exhausted and collapsed into bed. His voice expresses bewilderment that you're upset at all. This morning I was focused on getting ready for my meeting, he continues, and then I went from one event to another, and I figured we'd talk sometime today. You try to explain why you were so agitated at not hearing from him, but it doesn't come out right, and you're afraid you sound really desperate and clingy. Your husband listens, and you know by his response that he's annoyed. Do I have to check in with you every 5 minutes, he says sharply. Why do you fall apart just because I don't call you for 24 hours? The conversation ends on a bad note. And when you hang up the phone, you feel awful. All you'd wanted to do was let him know how much you missed him. Why couldn't he understand how worried you'd been? Was it that unreasonable for you to have been concerned when he didn't call or answer his phone? Or could it be that he's right? Is something wrong with me, you wonder? Am I really too needy? Most women hearing this story will resonate with the experiences and emotions described because, whether to a lesser or greater extent, we've all had these feelings at one time or another, right? We wonder if our reactions to our partner are justified or if they're overreactions. We question whether our needs are legitimate or excessive. Am I normal? We ask ourselves. As for men, well, I suspect many of you hearing this story will probably have a very different response. Something like, here's a perfect example of the way women overreact and drive men nuts. And you're right. This scenario is typical of the kind of thing women do that men simply don't understand, and therefore categorize as undesirable female behavior. It's easy to condemn something when we don't understand it. When not seen with the eyes of wisdom and deep comprehension, a woman's unique and beautiful characteristics can appear as something else, not so beautiful, to men, and even to ourselves. But when you learn the inner secrets of a woman's nature, suddenly, what appeared to be confusing becomes clear. What seemed unacceptable becomes appreciated, and what was challenging becomes endearing. Knowing a few basic truths about who women are will help us and the men we love understand our feelings and our behavior. In my research, I asked women, what are the things you want the man you love to understand about you as a woman at the deepest level of your being? And I asked them also, what do you need to explain to your partner about your female nature that's very basic to you, yet you suspect so different from the way he experiences the world as a man? I've done my best to summarize these basics about who women are, why we're that way, and what we want men to know about loving us. So I want to talk about two characteristics, the ones I believe are essential to understand in order to truly understand women. So much of why women do what we do, feel what we feel, and say what we say has its source in these two truths. They are, number one, women put love first, and two, women are creators. So let's talk about these two qualities. First, let's focus on number one. Women put love first. What does this mean? Well, a few months ago, a male friend I hadn't heard from in a while called to tell me he was in a new relationship with a woman he'd been seeing for 6 months. Brian had dated a lot in his life, but never really been serious with anybody, so this was great news. I asked him how it was going, and he said things were good, but he had some concerns about his girlfriend. What kind of concerns, I asked him. Well, he said, Lori is really terrific, sweet, and affectionate, but I'm kind of worried that something's wrong with her, like maybe she has psychological problems. That's why I'm calling you to get your feedback. Well, I asked him, tell me what she does that makes you think she has psychological problems. To begin with, he said, she says she thinks about me all the time. She calls me during the day just to say she misses me. She plans special things for us to do weeks in advance, and she always wants to talk about us and how well we get along. Then, Brian continued, last week, she told me that our relationship is the most important thing in her life. And what do you conclude from all this? I asked him, trying to hide the fact that I was smiling on the other end of the phone. Well, he said, if she's so focused on me like that, I think she obviously must be neurotic and insecure. No, dear, I said to my friend with a chuckle. She must be a woman in love. My friend Brian's a good guy, but he's a guy. He didn't have a lot of experience being in long-term relationships, and the way Lori was loving him seemed strange to him, even unhealthy, because he didn't understand the first secret about who women are. The world of women is a world of love. To love, to be devoted, to cherish intimate relationships is our nature. Women put love first. When I say this, I don't mean that we choose to make love and relationships a priority. These things just are a priority in our awareness. We don't choose to have our heart focused on the man we love. It just is. Here's an easy and visual way to understand the way women feel about love and relationships, and I call it the love pie. Visualize two circles like pies, one representing a man's consciousness and the other representing a woman's consciousness. Now imagine a tiny slice cut out in each circle, like a piece of the pie, maybe 1/10 of the whole. In the man's circle, the small slice is the percentage of his awareness he focuses on love and intimate relationships, and everything outside the slice, the other 9/10, is his awareness focused on his work, his hobbies, his projects, etc. In the woman's circle, however, it's exactly the opposite. The tiny slice of the pie is the focus of her awareness on work and hobbies and projects, and all the rest of the pie is the focus of her awareness on love and family life and relationships. Okay, this is probably a little bit of an exaggeration, but you get my point. Whenever I draw the love pie for my seminar attendees, it evokes peals of laughter from both sexes. Why? Because instinctively, we all know it's true. And as we'll see, it explains so many of the issues that become problems between men and women. Now here's an important distinction to remember. The love pie doesn't symbolize how we divide our time or how many hours we spend on love. It depicts where our awareness is focused on the inside, no matter what we're doing on the outside. For instance, a woman may work in her own career, whether inside or outside of the home, for as many hours as her husband does in his. So it's not like she's spending 1/10 of the time he does focusing on work, and 9/10 of her time shopping for lingerie or writing love poems or thinking about how much she adores him. But you can bet that while she's doing her job, she probably thinks more about him than he does about her. Right, ladies? From day to day, she's more conscious of the emotional rhythms of the relationship, more focused on wanting intimacy and connection. Sometimes when I share the love pie analogy with women, they don't completely relate to it until I remind them that focusing on love includes focusing on their children. Single mothers can understand this. Perhaps they aren't in a relationship, but their awareness is still on love the majority of the time, the love and concern they have for the kids. Even women who are married often feel the large portion of their love pie is more dedicated to their everyday relationship with their children than to the relationship with their husband. Now, whether this is healthy or not is a whole other topic, but the point's the same. She is a woman whose awareness, thoughts, and feelings are naturally focused on putting love first. After years of research and personal experience, I've concluded that love is experienced very differently by men and women. Did you know that? For most women, love is a non-stop reality, a consistent awareness that never quite disappears, even when we're working or performing tasks that seem to have nothing to do with love. For most men, on the other hand, the experience of love is much more compartmentalized. It's like an appointment men make with a part of themselves. See, women don't have to shift into a loving awareness. They're in it most of the time, whether it's being expressed or not. On the contrary, most men do have to consciously choose to make a shift into love mode. Let's go back for a minute to my friend Brian, who thought his new girlfriend must have psychological problems. This difference we've been examining between men and women explains why, to Brian, and maybe a lot of men, a woman's focus on him may seem excessive. See, Brian can't imagine himself focusing on the relationship as much as Lori does. If he did that, he'd have to block out the rest of his life and consciously concentrate on her. And to him, this would feel very unbalanced and very obsessive. So he incorrectly assumes that if this is how Lori feels about him, she must be making a huge effort to love him in this manner, and therefore she must be unbalanced and obsessive. Many men make the same error in judgment. They see a woman putting love first and have a hard time relating to it. If I was behaving that way or feeling that way, they think to themselves, it would mean I didn't have a life, that I was really needy and desperate. Then they conclude that their partner must be needy, empty, and insecure to love that much or focus on them that consistently. Women, however, know better. Lori isn't making any effort at all, is she? She's in love, and focusing on Brian is as natural to her as breathing. She doesn't even think about it. It just happens. The analogy of the love pie illustrates how men and women think about their relationship. Here's a second analogy, one that illustrates how men and women function in relationships. Imagine a man's consciousness and a woman's consciousness are kind of like houses, with different rooms for different areas our mind focuses on in our life. For instance, there's a work room, a body room, a recreation room, etc. For most women, every room in the house of her consciousness is also a love room, even when the rooms are dedicated to other functions. It's as if all the space in the house of her consciousness is used for love. It's a love house. For men, however, there's only one love room in the house of their mind. Therefore, if the man wants to put his focus on love and the relationship, he consciously has to leave the other rooms and go to his love room. This analogy of the love room explains a phenomenon I've experienced so often in my own relationships, and I know other women have as well. I'm with my partner, and I reach out to relate to him in a romantic way, but he doesn't respond. I know he loves me, so I can't understand why he seems so distant. And if I say, "What's wrong, honey?" he invariably replies, "Nothing's wrong." I begin to feel frustrated and uncomfortable because I'm trying to connect with him in an emotional way, but he's not reciprocating. What's actually happening in this situation? I'm in my love house, which is full of love rooms, and I'm relating to my mate in a loving, intimate way, only he's not in his love room. Maybe he's in the work room of his mind and is thinking about a project he needs to complete. Or maybe he's in his relaxing room watching TV. Suddenly, there I am wanting to relate to him emotionally, which he translates as my wanting him to go to his love room where he can be with me that way. But he doesn't want to go to his love room, right, guys? He's busy in some other room of his consciousness. Of course, if I don't understand this concept of the love room, then I don't realize that my partner is not available to me emotionally at that moment. It just feels as though he's somehow shutting me out. And here's the most unfortunate part. Since my partner's not in his love room, my attempt to connect emotionally can feel to him as if I'm trying to control him or tell him what to do. So when I say to my mate, "What's wrong?" it probably feels as if I'm actually saying, "Why aren't you in your love room right now? Why can't you just drop everything and go there so we can be romantic?" See, this explains the reactions women often get from men when we try to create an emotional or romantic moment out of the blue, with no warning, so to speak. The reactions range from amusement, mild annoyance and impatience, all the way up the scale to anger and shutting down. We're trying to love him. He feels like we're trying to make him shift out of the state of awareness he's in and drag him into his love room. Recently, my partner and I went on a brief vacation and had a really wonderful and romantic time. The morning of the day we were leaving, we felt really close and commented on how wonderful the trip had been. A few hours later, we left for the airport to fly home. After we checked in for our flight, I noticed my partner seemed to have become a little distant. He wasn't responding to me in the same way as earlier in the day, and he felt far away. "Is something wrong, darling?" I asked. "No," he replied, but something had changed. I knew it, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I began to get worried. What could be going on? I continued to ask him if he was all right during our first flight and during our wait at the second airport for the connecting flight. Of course, the more I tried to get him to talk, the farther and farther away he seemed to go, and by the time we got home late that evening, things just felt awful. The next day, everything was fine again, but I was still perplexed. What had happened during our trip home to create such an upset feeling between us? Then it dawned on me. When my mate and I were on vacation at the hotel, it was as if he spent the whole time in the love room of his consciousness. He had no work, no obligations, and gladly went to that part of himself where he could connect with me emotionally and romantically. Then we left for home, and without my realizing it, he left his love room and moved into his traveling on a journey room, in which he was focused on the logistics of dealing with taxis, airports, finding gates, etc. I, too, was paying attention to the details of our trip and went to a more business-like portion of my awareness. However, being a woman, I brought the love room consciousness with me. So there I was, snuggling up to him while we waited for the plane, talking about romantic things we'd done on our vacation, trying to continue the same mood we'd shared during those few days, totally unaware that he had checked out of his love room hours before. No wonder I felt abandoned and alone. He was no longer keeping me company in the love room. And no wonder he felt irritated. It appeared to him that I wasn't acknowledging or approving of his choice to shift gears. Guys, when your woman comes knocking on the door of your love room, she's hoping to find you there. So when she discovers that the room is empty, and you aren't where you were, say, the hour before or the night before, she can become confused and hurt and feel as if somehow you've gone away. When you notice her looking at you sort of bewildered and asking, "What's wrong?" remind yourself that it's likely you're not in your love room, but she's in one of hers. She's not trying to criticize you for where you are. She's just trying to make a connection. Then you have two choices, guys. You can make a quick visit to your love room if that works for you, shifting into love mode for just a minute to give her a hug or say something sweet. Or you can let her know that you're in a different room of your consciousness at the moment, thinking about work or concentrating on driving, whatever, and that you'll try to meet her in your love room a little later. Are you beginning to understand how differently men and women see themselves when it comes to love? This contrast has its source in the way we each value ourselves as a human being. Women define and value themselves by how successfully they love and relate. Men define and value themselves by how successfully they achieve and accomplish. Big difference, right? How did men and women get to be this way? The reasons are sociological and cultural, and they go back thousands of years. Simply put, in more primitive times, a man's value was measured on his ability to hunt and provide his family or group with food, his ability to defend himself and those he was responsible for, and his standing in the tribe or community. His success at these tasks literally meant life or death for him and those he loved. And still today, society judges men on how much money they make or how high up on the ladder of success they've climbed, on what they achieve. A woman in primitive times, on the other hand, was valued for very different characteristics. Her ability to take care of a man and their children, her ability to emotionally and sexually satisfy him, and thereby keep him interested enough to continue providing for her and protecting her. Her success at these tasks also had life or death consequences. For females that didn't please men and win their favor had no way to take care of themselves and ultimately would perish. Now, isn't it becoming clear why women put love first? We've done it for thousands of years. Our very survival depended on it. We've learned to maintain a continual awareness of the state of our love life, doing our best to make sure everything's okay, that there aren't any problems we're overlooking, that our partner is still happy with us. So when things are good in our relationship, we feel good about ourselves, and when they're not, we feel unsettled and insecure. This explains a secret all women know about ourselves. No matter how smoothly things are going in our professional life or with our projects and interests, if there's a problem in our intimate relationship, we're miserable. We could be having a fantastic day at the office, but if things are bad at home, it ends up feeling like a bad day, right, ladies? It doesn't even have to be a substantial problem. Maybe we just had a little argument with our husband the night before, but that will be enough to make our heart ache all day long, in spite of whatever accomplishments we experience at work. I must confess that I've experienced this time and time again in my own life. I could be having the most exciting day, doing a TV show, promoting a new book, or giving a seminar to thousands of people, but if there's some lack of harmony in my relationship with my partner, it's really difficult for me to fully feel the joy of my achievements. Why? Because like many women, I define myself so strongly by the big part of my love pie, the content of my heart, and the state of love in my life. The truth is that all the applause or book sales or attention in the world can't remove the sadness I feel when my mate and I aren't as connected as I want to be. Most men experience the opposite of this phenomenon. If things are wonderful with their love life, but they're having a bad day at work, it's difficult for them to feel good. Why? Because men also tend to define themselves by the big part of their love pie. Only in the case of men, it's their achievements in their career, their accomplishments in the world. Here's another point. One of the hardest lessons about love I've had to learn as a woman has to do with not misinterpreting a man's behavior just because he isn't responding as I would. When a man doesn't seem to want to give us much time, attention, or focus as we think he should, our tendency is to assume something's wrong, right, ladies? We think, if I were behaving that way, it would mean I was really angry with him or I didn't care. Women want men to know that sometimes we assume your lack of focus on the relationship means you don't love us or care about us as much as we do. And this is why we get upset or hurt guys when you don't put us first. We want to feel you are as committed to the relationship as we are, and that you value us as much as we value you. Now, I agree that as women we need to remember that men are different and that they don't always show their commitment to love in the same way we do. But you can help us out a lot, guys, by understanding why we get so upset when it looks to us like you don't care or you're not valuing the relationship. And you can also help us out by not making us wrong for our emotional reactions. Men, I'm going to be making this point over and over throughout this program. Each time you refuse to understand why your mate is feeling upset about something, whether you realize it or not, you end up causing or exacerbating the very behaviors and emotions you dislike in her. In other words, she may not start out feeling insecure, she's just behaving in ways women do when they put love first. But your critical reaction to her behavior alarms her, and then she does begin feeling insecure. In my years working with thousands of women, this information is one of the most essential things women wanted men to know. So guys, when you don't make an effort to understand a little bit more about why women are the way we are, you can actually unwittingly contribute to the very behaviors in your partner that you can't stand. Remember the story I told earlier about the woman whose husband didn't call her from his out-of-town trip? He couldn't understand why she was so upset and accused her of being insecure for needing to speak to him. Well, the reason she was upset was simple. She was imagining herself in her husband's situation. She knew that if she'd been the one who was out of town and didn't call home for 24 hours, it would have meant she was deliberately avoiding him and that something was terribly wrong. She would have never not checked in with him, right, ladies? So she concluded that his not checking in with her meant he didn't care about her feelings. Her husband didn't get this principle. He just knew she was upset, and this made him feel a whole bunch of feelings he didn't want to feel. That he'd done something wrong, that he'd somehow upset her, that she had certain expectations of him that took away his sense of being free and independent. Rather than taking the time to understand why she might have been upset or expressing his remorse for worrying her, he blamed her for being upset in the first place. It was as if he was saying, "You're upset because there's something wrong with you and not because of anything I may have done or not done." Now his wife received this message loud and clear, and what was the result? It only made her feel worse and actually created the very insecurity he accused her of. The more he invalidated her feelings and attributed them to her neediness rather than to her love, the more hurt and worried she became. Guys, this story is a perfect illustration of why I believe you should be motivated to put what you're hearing into practice. Wouldn't it be great to know that by handling conversations or situations with your mate just a little differently, you could prevent many of the upsets and stressful moments you dread in your relationship? When you try some of the suggestions I'll be sharing, you'll be amazed to see how well the woman you love responds. Here's a summary of what I think are the most important points to remember about women putting love first. Men, this is the bottom line information that will help you understand and get along better with your partner. And ladies, this is the part of the program you want to share with your husband or boyfriend, even if he hasn't heard the rest. First, when women put love first, we always want to invest time and energy into our relationship. We want to talk to our man, be with him, and work on staying connected. We also want to make plans and create special memories. We want to do whatever we can to make the relationship close and lasting. Now, men misinterpret this by thinking we aren't independent enough, we're too needy or insecure. You think we want to control you by making you give up your time and attention to us. But women think of love as our job. That's why we always want to work on it, because we feel if things aren't going well in our relationship, it means somehow we failed to do our job properly. Here are some of the things we'd like men to do. We'd love it if you expressed your appreciation for how much attention we put into wanting to create a wonderful relationship, rather than criticizing us for how focused we are on it. We would love it if you would let us know you value our dedication and cherish our devotion as beautiful qualities, rather than thinking we're neurotic. And third, we would love it if when we try to plan time with you, you remind yourself we're doing this because we love you, not because we're trying to control your time. Here's the second point about women putting love first to remember. When women put love first, we always want to work on the relationship. We want to continually improve things to become closer. We want to know if there's a problem, and then we want to fix it. We persist in trying to find out how a man is feeling when we suspect he may not be happy with us. Now, guys, you misinterpret this by thinking we're too obsessive and we can't just relax and let things be. You think we're too emotional and reactive, that we're criticizing you and saying you aren't good enough. And you think we want to control you. Because love is so important to women, you have to understand we feel a responsibility to maintain and protect it. So here are some things that we'd love men to do. Guys, we'd love it if you expressed your appreciation for how concerned we are about the state of our relationship and how diligently we try to pinpoint and eliminate tension. We'd love it if you would see our desire to work on the relationship as an expression of our passion for you, rather than as a sign that we're obsessed with making everything perfect or that we'll never be satisfied. Most of all, we'd love it if you took the initiative to notice where the relationship could improve, and if you expressed a desire to work on it, rather than waiting for us to always be the one to bring up issues so we look like the troublemaker. So how could you apply these suggestions to situations that come up in your relationship? For instance, when your girlfriend tries to make plans with you for an upcoming weekend, don't just give her your old response. Why do you have to plan everything? Instead, try a new response that understands she's putting love first, like, thanks for wanting to spend time with me. Can you see how an old response would be based on a misinterpretation of a woman's behavior when she's actually putting love first? An assumption that she's just trying to control you? The new response, on the other hand, is based on an understanding of the true intention behind her behavior. Guys, try experimenting with this idea, even if it feels awkward at first. I promise you'll love the results. Remember, a woman with an open, loving, passionate heart is offering you a profound gift. She's not trying to take anything from you, but rather give you her love, her commitment, her devotion. Not all women are capable of doing this, so if you have one who is, hold tightly to her and thank your lucky stars that you found her. And women, know that having a tender, open heart and putting love first is not a curse, but a blessing. Loving deeply and with devotion is not a mistake, but a gift. Not a weakness, but an expression of who you are as a woman. I believe that when we as women learn to celebrate our ability to love deeply and to honor ourselves for our beautiful, abundant hearts, we'll make it easier for the men in our lives to do the same. Now let's talk about the second quality of women. Why do women always want to make things better? Why do we enjoy making plans so much? Why do we work so hard to ensure harmony with our lover? This is the second secret about who women are. That's the motivation for so much of how we behave in relationships, and it's one of the most beautiful qualities women possess, one that is such an integral part of our psyche that we don't even think about it. And it's the answer to the questions I just asked. And here it is. Women are creators. It's in our nature to create. Women are life givers, and it's our mystery and our magic. We have the power to bring forth something out of nothing. This ability to give birth to life, to create, is most obvious when we become mothers and bring a child into the world. But whether or not we have children, as women, we're always giving birth, always creating something where nothing existed before. If not with our bodies, then with our words, our actions, our love. We do this when we give birth to a delicious meal for our family, or a bedtime story for our child, or maybe a more effective way to market our company's product. We create when we have an intimate conversation with our partner, or when we display flowers in a vase. And as creators, women are also alchemists. We change the form of things magically. We transmute the ordinary into the beautiful, and the empty into the meaningful. Women rarely encounter things we don't feel inspired, or at least tempted to improve upon, right? Whether it's the way a room is decorated, or the way a friend is handling a problem in her relationship. We're tempted to improve the way our partners set the table for dinner, or the way the two of us are communicating. Our nature to create is so much a part of us, we rarely think about it or acknowledge it. We just do it. For instance, when you first moved in, your empty house or apartment looked like nothing. But as you walked through the rooms, you thought, I know just what to do to make it beautiful. I'm going to paint the walls a pale peach. I'll put my couch over here, my chair's over here. I'll get a rug to brighten up the floor. I'll put my plants in this corner. And before long, it looked fantastic, right? Where there was nothing, you created a warm and inviting home. And it was the most natural thing in the world for you to do. Well, that scenario sounds kind of harmless, right? How then can a woman's creative expression be a problem in her relationship with a man? Well, let's look at how women create and why it's easy for a man to misinterpret and misunderstand a woman's creative instincts. One way women create is what I call manifesting. Manifesting means creating what wasn't there before, and women love to manifest. The very act of starting with nothing and ending up with something thrills us in a deep part of our being. We experience this joy of manifesting in big and small ways every day. For instance, we hear of friends coming into town and we quickly create an impromptu party around her visit. Or we share some of our deep feelings with our partner while walking in the park, and all of a sudden what was just a stroll transforms into a sweet experience of bonding. When women manifest, they create a special moment, something beautiful to look at, or something that brings another person joy. Another way women manifest is in creating and recreating ourselves. All you need to do for proof of this is walk into any major department store and look around at all the cosmetic counters. There before you are hundreds of women trying on makeup, testing new scents, and enjoying themselves immensely. Now guys imagine this scene and roll their eyes, concluding that women are just vain or superficial. But what's happening in this store isn't vanity. It's creativity, right, ladies? It's a woman creating a look, an image, using our own face as a canvas as we become an artist. And it's the same with clothing or jewelry or the other ways women adorn our bodies. These female pastimes are ways for the female creative urge to express itself. This is why so many women love to shop, even when they don't buy anything. We're doing research for our next creative undertaking. Another way women manifest the creative urge is by filling space. We like to fill space. We see an empty table and we think about what we could put on it to make it look better. It's what we do when there's an awkward silence in a conversation and we invent something clever to break the ice. Filling the space describes one of the ways women express our desire to create. We like to fill up what's empty. It's as if when we see something empty or blank, we feel the need to fill it, to manifest something in that space so it becomes occupied with life, with beauty, with love. Here's an important point to understand. One of the most common ways women fill the space is by making plans, right? We love to plan. We love to take what was a blank space in the future and turn it into something exciting and meaningful. We don't do this, as some men conclude, out of insecurity or a need to control our partner's time. We plan because it gives our creative power a wonderful outlet in which to express itself. I don't think guys realize the joy women take in planning, especially when it involves their intimate relationship. And that's because, for most men, planning is not an emotional activity as it is for women. Right, ladies? See, when a man plans, he's doing a task, figuring out the details. He's getting something off of his to-do list, and then he moves on to the next thing. When a woman plans, it's an act of love. Whether it's a party, an evening out, a vacation, a special dinner, the process of planning becomes a channel through which a woman's devotion can flow. It's as creative an act for her as painting a picture or composing a song. She's giving birth to an event, a happening, an opportunity for romance or fun. And this makes her very happy. Here's the second way women's creative nature manifests, and it's called improving. What's the difference between manifesting and improving? Well, manifesting is creating from scratch, birthing something out of nothing. Improving, on the other hand, is taking something that already exists and making it better. It's rebirthing. This urge to improve is so much a part of most women's character that we're not even aware of its almost omnipresent existence in our speech, in our behavior, in our attitude towards everything. We accept it in ourselves just as we accept it in other women. It's just the way we are. This desire to improve what's within us and around us is actually the act of seeing the potential in things, the possibility hidden beneath the surface, and doing what we can to help that potential manifest. Women seem to possess this kind of vision that sees the flower waiting to erupt from the seed, and also the tendency to nurture that seed until it blossoms. Perhaps this vision of potentiality is so strong in us because we're genetically designed to be mothers, right? To nurture what's small so it can grow. And we exercise this part of ourselves in big and small ways every day. For instance, a coworker in your office shows you the new scarf her boyfriend bought her. "Isn't this gorgeous?" she says. "Tom gave it to me." "It's beautiful," you reply. "What a great color for you." Then without even thinking, you add, "Here, let me just pull this part a little tighter and tuck in these ends. Oh, now it looks perfect. What do you think?" Your friend looks in the mirror and replies, "You're right. It does look better. Thanks." It was totally natural for you to want to improve upon the way she had tied the scarf, right? You saw a way it could be better, and she intuitively understood this and welcomed your input. Ladies, I bet most of you can relate to that example. It illustrates how this tendency to improve is such a part of our consciousness. Notice the woman was grateful for the input she received. Why? Other women understand and accept this quality. Now, for a contrast, imagine the scenario enacted by two men instead of two women. First of all, a guy wouldn't show off the new tie his girlfriend bought him to his coworker. But secondly, the coworker wouldn't comment that the tie needed to be straightened, let alone just reach out and do it. And third, if he did, the guy with the tie would feel like his boundaries had been violated, not to mention probably making assumptions, correct or not, about his coworker's sexual preference. What's my point? It's that men don't have this non-stop creative urge to improve things. Not only that, they actually interpret offers of help or advice as unnecessary, unwelcome, and intrusive. Women, on the other hand, are natural helpers, natural fixers. We're always on the lookout for whatever or whomever needs assistance. If we hear just a little change of tone in our baby's cry while she's in her crib, we quickly go in to check and make sure she's okay. If we see a woman in a store struggling to zip up the back of her dress, we volunteer to help. If we sense our lover's having a rough day, we ask him what's wrong and if there's anything we can do. Again, perhaps it's because we're genetically designed to be mothers that we have such an elaborate system of built-in radar that detects need in others. Over and over again in my interviews with women, they asked me to explain this to men. When a woman is trying to help or improve something in her relationship with you, she isn't doing it out of a desire to criticize or make you wrong. She's doing it out of love, and with a vision of the potential for something even greater to blossom between you. Now, at times, I think men do love the part of women that's a manifester and improver, but they can also really fear and mistrust it. See, there's a force to that expression of a woman's nature that often makes men uncomfortable, like gazing upon a rushing body of water that can't be stopped as it moves forward towards them. Guys know they're witnessing something intense, something powerful, and something that appears at times almost relentless in its mission to manifest a particular outcome. In a way, they're right. For when a woman's in a creative mode, she's tapping into the primordial life force that reverberates deep inside of her. Whether she's conscious of this or not, she is in that moment a channel for what the Eastern mystics call the Shakti, the life-giving principle, the creative power that's responsible for every form of manifestation. Here's an important point I want to share with you. The intensity of the creative life force manifesting itself in a woman's behavior or intention can mistakenly appear aggressive, domineering, and controlling to a man. Men, a woman could be expressing her tendency to manifest or improve by planning a trip for the two of you or offering you suggestions for a problem you're having at work. It doesn't matter what her specific behavior is, but somehow you end up feeling as if she's trying to control you. Let me share a story from my own past that perfectly illustrates this point. Years ago, when I was in one of my first serious relationships, my partner and I decided to take a trip to the Caribbean. Now, neither of us had been there before. We agreed we would treat ourselves and go. I asked him if he wanted to make the arrangements, and he suggested I go ahead and look into it. Our vacation was approaching in 4 months, and so I thought I'd better get started on the plans right away. The next day I went to the bookstore and bought several guidebooks for the Caribbean islands. I began researching all the different places we could stay, called the 800 numbers to order free brochures from hotels, and I got in touch with friends who'd taken trips to a number of islands to ask their opinion of the best places to visit. Within days I had pages of data about every aspect of our upcoming journey. Well, one evening later that week, I enthusiastically showed my partner all the information I'd discovered, explaining in detail which hotels in our budget seemed best, which islands had the most features suited to our taste, what airlines offered the best flights. I sat there bursting with excitement as I shared the results of my vacation project, and couldn't wait to see my mate's reaction, for I was sure he'd be so pleased with me and the thorough job I'd done. Well, you can imagine my surprise when I finished my presentation, looked at my partner, only to discover he had this horribly cold look on his face. "Is something wrong?" I asked him. He didn't respond. He just kept looking at me with that same uncomfortable stare. "Didn't you like the places I showed you?" I probed. "They were fine," he finally said in a flat voice, breaking the icy silence. "But what's the matter?" I pleaded. "Why do you look like you're mad at me?" "It's just the way you did all of this," he said in a sharp tone. "Why did you even bother telling me about it? I mean, it looks like you've already made up your mind about where you want to go and what you like best. Since it's your plan, there's really nothing for me to say." My plan? I thought, what's he talking about? It's our vacation. All I did was do the research. I couldn't understand why he was so upset with me. "But I thought you told me to go ahead and look into this," I said. "Yeah, but I didn't think you'd make it a full-time job," he retorted sarcastically. "As usual, you're just taking control and doing things your way." Tears began to fill my eyes and trickle down my cheeks. "I wasn't trying to take control," I insisted, my voice trembling with emotion. "I was just trying to plan a wonderful vacation, and now you've ruined it." I forgot how the conversation ended, but I remember exactly how I felt. I was shocked, confused, and very hurt. How could he interpret my trying to create the perfect vacation as controlling? My only intention had been to make him happy. What had gone wrong? Well, many years have passed since this incident, but I've experienced others like it over and over again. And I've heard countless stories from women about similar circumstances where she's happily in her creative mode, focused on a plan or project for herself and her partner, and he reacts with irritation, annoyance, even anger. She ends up feeling hurt and unappreciated. He ends up feeling controlled and manipulated. Why do men interpret a woman's creative focus as an attempt to control them? Well, the answer's complicated, but in part, it has to do with a man's need to feel autonomous and his habit of rebelling when he feels he's being told what to do. For instance, in the story about my boyfriend in the Caribbean trip, my thorough and passionate presentation of the travel information unconsciously made him feel as though he had no choice, as if I was announcing, "This is what we're doing." Of course, this wasn't my intention. My theory is that he interpreted the intensity and detail of my communication almost like a command. See, remember, in most cases, a woman's true intention isn't to tell you what to do, guys. It's to share her input and offer her creative contribution, whether planning a vacation, or finding you a doctor, or asking that you spend time together to talk about issues in your relationship. So guys, when you find yourself feeling controlled by the woman in your life, ask yourself, what is her true intention in doing this? This is a powerful question that can snap you out of that unconscious reflex of concluding she's controlling you. If you take the time to ask this question, what's her true intention in doing this? You'll probably discover the true answer in your heart. She's doing this because she loves me. She wants to manifest something wonderful or plan something delightful, but her intention is not to control me. Practice recognizing the things a woman does as expressions of her creative nature, rather than reacting to them in the old critical ways. Instead of seeing her as controlling, see her as caring. Instead of seeing her as aggressive, see her as passionate. Instead of seeing her as commanding, see her as enthusiastic. The propensity to create something out of nothing is a woman's blessing, but sometimes it can also be our curse. It's a blessing when we decorate an empty house and turn it into a home, or manifest a romantic evening for our mate. But it's a problem when we create an emotional issue where there really wasn't any. Here's an example I know every woman will relate to. Your husband has a funny look on his face when he leaves the house in the morning, and you can't get it out of your mind. All day long you create scenario after scenario about what might be wrong. By the time he comes home, you're practically sure he wants a divorce and just hasn't told you yet. Later, he tells you that he just had a terrible case of indigestion. See, a woman's habit of creating can sometimes work against us as we create unnecessary worry, insecurity, or fear about our relationship. We admit it, guys. Women know we do this, and believe me, we don't like this part of ourselves either. So while we try to work on it, we'd appreciate it if you can remember that when we get too creative and imagine things that aren't there, you can prevent a negative emotional spiral by telling us what's going on with you. Here's what we'd like you to do. When you realize that a woman looks or sounds upset and you have no idea why, ask us what's wrong. This gives us the opportunity to tell you what we think is happening, and if we're mistaken, you can correct it. We can avoid being upset over nothing. Also, if you notice in a particular moment, guys, that you're not feeling well or you're stressed or worried, please try to let us know. You don't have to go into the details, but just informing us that you're anxious for some reason that has nothing to do with us will allow us not to jump to the wrong conclusion and create a problem where there really wasn't any. I know that putting these suggestions into practice may feel a little unnatural at first, guys, but believe me, you will love the results. Your woman will be calmer, less emotionally reactive for no reason, and much more fun to be around. Here's the next important thing I'd like to share with you. After working with the information collected from thousands of seminars, interviews, conversations, and letters, I've concluded in my research that women have 3 secret needs in love and relationships. They need to feel safe, they need to feel connected, and they need to feel valued. I'm going to be talking now about these 3 secret needs. I call them secret not because they're so mysterious, but because often we as women aren't even aware that we have these needs, and therefore men certainly can't be expected to know about them either. If you're a woman and you take the time to truly understand these needs, you'll know much more about yourself and why you feel and react as you do. If you're a man, learning about these 3 needs will help you understand and love the woman in your life as you never have before. Why do women seem to need more reassurance in their relationships than men do? Why do women constantly want to know what their partner's feeling or thinking? The answer to these questions is the same. Because one of our most basic needs as women in an intimate relationship is the need to feel safe. Now, I'm not talking about physical safety, but rather the feeling of emotional safety. It's the deep sense that the relationship is solid, that our partner's affections are serious and committed, that we can trust the love we feel, and thus allow ourselves to open fully to give and receive it. This emotional safety is the key that unlocks a woman's heart and soul. When we feel safe, we're able to open up, right, ladies? When we feel safe, we're able to risk. When we feel safe, we're able to shine. Why is this need for a feeling of safety so important to women? Well, I believe it's because in some place deep inside of us, all women feel a little unsafe. Now, this may be politically incorrect to say, but I really feel it's true. No matter how much we consider ourselves liberated, independent, and self-reliant, this is a woman's secret. A part of our psyche that we continually battle against, negotiate with, criticize ourselves for, but somehow never completely eliminate. Where does this sense of not being safe come from, then? Well, to begin, it's the result of living in what is still essentially a man's world in so many ways. Ours is a society that only in the past few decades has begun to value and respect women and offer us some of what men have been entitled to since the beginning of recorded history. You know, still today in many parts of this planet, male life is considered so much more valuable than female life. And female babies are actually killed, thought to be worthless or burdensome to the family who wants sons and heirs. We may hear about this and say, yeah, but that kind of thing happens in undeveloped countries. Yet, in the most developed of nations, the United States, women get paid substantially less than men when they perform the same job. Now, this may not appear as dramatic as the sacrifice of female infants, but isn't the message the same? That a man's life and contribution is worth more than a woman's. To really understand why as women we may feel unsafe, however, I think we need to go back in time to the beginnings of civilization and pay a visit to our female ancestors. These women were totally dependent on men for their survival. Men were the hunters, therefore they were the ones who could provide food. They were also the warriors, the ones who were strong enough and skilled enough to fight off animal or human threats and thus protect us and our children from death. As for the women, most of us had only one goal in mind, to find a man to take care of us and the many offspring we would inevitably have, no birth control, as soon as we were of the age to bear children. Imagine, ladies, knowing that without a man, you literally could not stay alive. Imagine knowing that if your mate became displeased with you, he could kick you and your babies out of the cave or dwelling, and you would freeze or starve or be devoured by wild beasts. How could you ever truly feel safe? Well, even as humanity evolved over several thousand years, women remained physically and financially and socially dependent on men. We couldn't support ourselves. We had none of the opportunities or freedoms men had, and thus, our sense of personal power was limited at best. Remember, it's only in the last century when it finally became widely acceptable and possible for women to work, and thus have the choice to survive independent from a man if we wanted to. It was also only in the last century, with the advent of birth control, that women could choose whether or not we would like to have children. So these are the historical roots that all women come from. Whether you're a woman of 18 or 80, whether you consider yourself totally empowered or are still struggling to get there, we all share this legacy. I believe that we have a certain genetic memory that keeps the past alive in us. It speaks to our hearts in almost inaudible whispers, saying things like, "You can't do or achieve that. Only men can become that powerful. You'd better find someone to take care of you, because you'll never be able to do it yourself." Embedded in these messages, the bottom line is, you're not safe. If you're a man listening to this, please know that I offer these thoughts not as a complaint or judgment against men, but simply as an explanation for why women often feel a deep sense of insecurity whose source we can't pinpoint, and a need for reassurance that often appears to go beyond what should be required. Most men never really consider women from this perspective because as men, you have a very different history as a species, and thus an understandably very different way of operating in the world. Now you may be thinking, but I'm not that sexist caveman you're writing about. I don't care if my girlfriend uses my last name when we get married. I love her. I don't want to limit her in any way. To that I say, your girlfriend's lucky to be with such a great guy. But to really know her heart, you need to know the psychology she may have inherited from generations of women who came before her. If historically women have been taught that our survival depends on men, then our job is to attract a man and keep his interest so we don't lose him. So, how we look, how good we are in bed, how we express ourselves, all of our habits, decisions, and behaviors have at their basis one thought. Will this make him happy? Our unconscious reasoning tells us that if we keep a man happy, he will stay with us, and if he stays with us, then we will be safe. This is why women often constantly look to our men for cues to tell us how we're doing. Is he pleased with me, we ask ourselves? Does he seem content in the relationship? When we see signs that indicate the answer is yes, we breathe a sigh of relief and allow ourselves to relax into a certain level of safety. However, if we think we perceive signs that a man is unhappy with us in some way, our sense of safety diminishes radically. I know that for myself and most women I've worked with, this pattern of seeking approval in order to feel safe is not a conscious process. It's more like a primal reaction that surfaces in a relationship with a man, one that often surprises us with its intensity. Why do I care so much what he thinks, we ask ourselves? Why do I get so insecure when just one little thing goes wrong? Well, the answer, I believe, is that a man's apparent disapproval of or displeasure with us can trigger a woman's unconscious survival mechanism, creating the feeling that she is somehow in danger and therefore is not safe. Let's look at a typical scenario that illustrates this point. Kathy and Juan have been living together for 2 years, and they recently became engaged. One Sunday afternoon, Kathy notices that Juan seems withdrawn and irritable with her, but when she asks him if anything's wrong, he responds, "No, nothing's wrong." Kathy tries to get him to talk about what's going on and tells him that he's acting like he's mad at her about something and that it's bothering her. Juan becomes more and more silent. Finally, Kathy starts to cry and asks Juan if he's having second thoughts about the engagement. Juan becomes angry, saying, "I don't know what your problem is, but I can't deal with this," and goes in the next room to watch TV. What is Kathy feeling? She's anxious, worried, and has a knot of dread in the pit of her stomach. Something is wrong, her instincts scream. Juan's apparent displeasure with her triggered her survival mechanism. It's as if she sniffs trouble, and warning bells go off in her psyche indicating danger, danger. And all of this happens so automatically that she isn't even aware of it. What's Juan feeling? He's annoyed, irritated, and confused. He can't understand why Kathy was so upset today, why she got so dramatic and scared. Nothing was going on except he had a headache and just wanted to spend some time alone watching TV. So who's responsible for this couple's upset? They both are. Kathy needs to become more aware of how her survival mechanism gets triggered when she doesn't feel safe and learn to moderate her reactions. And Juan needs to become more aware of what he does that triggers Kathy's unease. In this case, not giving her any information about what was going on with him, the headache, thus allowing her to jump to her own scary conclusions. Both of them will benefit from understanding this information about a woman's need to feel safe. When women feel safe, we're at our best. We're more relaxed and less tense, more confident and less insecure, more independent and less needy. In other words, more of all the good stuff men like about us and less of all the stuff that drives men crazy. And here's something else that's important to remember. Women instinctively know that when we feel safe, we're more of who we want to be, as well as who men want us to be. So therefore, we try, consciously or unconsciously, to get our man to do the things that will make us feel safe. Guys, why do we want you to tell us you love us, or share how you're feeling, or express your appreciation, or make time for us, or any of the other things on the list your woman has of how she wishes you'd act? It's not to control you, or have power over you, or get our own way. It's because we know these things will make us feel safe. And when we feel safe, we will be a better partner for you and happier with ourselves. Well, if we as women are at our best when we feel emotionally safe, guess what? We're at our worst when we don't feel safe. The sense of being unsafe makes us fearful. And when we're afraid, we resort to behaviors that neither we nor the men in our lives find appealing. One way women respond when we don't feel safe is to become more needy, clingy, or possessive, right, ladies? The more unsafe a woman feels, the more she may crave demonstrations of what will make her feel safe again. She wants more affection, more attention, more reassurance. To a man, it can seem as though his mate has suddenly fallen apart. She's become too weak and needy. To her, it seems as if she's reverting to behaviors that reflect her most insecure self. Now, typically, most men do not have a positive reaction to a woman's neediness or insecurity. Even though these are the times when a woman needs the most reassurance from her partner, often a man's response is to withdraw and actually give her less reassurance than normal, which of course only makes things worse. This begins an unhealthy, vicious cycle that most couples are all too familiar with. The woman feels unsafe and becomes a little needy. The man reacts negatively to her neediness by pulling away. The more he pulls away, the more unsafe she feels, and the needier she gets. Then he pulls away even further, and the whole situation spirals downward. Sound familiar? Guys, I can't emphasize this point enough. Most women have a very quick recovery time from being upset if you just do something to make us feel safe again. Now, I know you don't like to feel you have to behave in a certain way just because a woman wants you to, but I assure you that you'll be saving yourself so much trouble, time, and headache if you just give this a try. So, if you sense we suddenly have become more needy, and for some reason are exhibiting symptoms of not feeling emotionally safe, don't criticize us for our neediness and make us feel even more unsafe. Don't pull away or avoid us. Instead, we would love it if you would accept that we're feeling unsafe, whether it makes sense or not, and offer us some reassurance, some affection, some tenderness. Some women deal with unsafe feelings not by becoming more vulnerable, but by becoming less vulnerable. When something triggers a lack of emotional safety in us, sometimes we shut off our feelings and barricade the doors to our heart, hoping to protect ourselves from getting hurt. Now, women like this may suddenly not get needy, but turn cold towards their partner, become critical and irritable, and even feel sexually turned off. The problem with this kind of reaction is that most of the time men have no idea that we're actually hurting or afraid. We just look pissed off. So it's much more difficult for them to think, gee, my sweetheart must be feeling unsafe right now. I think I'll reassure her. No, instead, they withdraw even more, hoping to shield themselves from our anger or rejection. Ladies, if we're going to ask men to try to understand our needs, we have a responsibility not to make them have to work like a detective to figure out what's going on with us. Don't play games. Don't conclude that he'll get the hint and figure out what you want if you're cold, because he won't. Be honest and try to explain how you're feeling. This will give you a much better chance of getting through to him, and hopefully he'll respond by offering you the reassurance you're asking for. I'm not suggesting that it's acceptable for women to shut down emotionally when we're feeling unsafe, but if you're a man and are with a woman you suspect does this, you may be able to help her heal this pattern by reaching out with love even when it appears that she's pushing you away. See, many times that mask of coldness or indifference you see is really a mask of fear, guys. At those times, all it may take is a little reassuring effort on your part for the shut-down woman before you to transform back into the loving woman you want to be with. Perhaps by now the men listening to this are thinking, all right, I get it. I need to make my partner feel safe. But exactly how do I do that? What is it that makes a woman feel safe? Here are a few of the most common things that create a deep sense of emotional safety in a woman. First, women feel safe when we spend time with our partners. The presence of the man we love and who loves us creates a primal feeling of safety. His absence, particularly too much of it, creates the opposite, a lack of safety. Now, of course, I'm not saying that when a man goes to work during the day, his wife suddenly feels unsafe, or that we always feel safe when we're together. Generally, however, spending time together with her man creates a feeling of safety in a woman because, in a very primal way, it sends a message to her brain that she's not alone, that she's cared for. The second way a woman can feel safe is when a man allows us entry into his inner world. One of the most difficult things for many men to do is to open up and let a woman into the world of their hearts. Men have been trained since the beginning of time that showing emotions, particularly vulnerable ones, is a sign of weakness, and therefore is a dangerous thing to do. Instinctively, men don't often allow others entry into their inner world, yet the irony is, this is precisely one of the things that makes a woman feel the most safe and the most loved by her man, when he opens up and shares his deepest self. Now, guys, I know this is easier said than done, and we'll be talking more about it later. For now, just know that if you really want to know the secret for making a woman feel safe, opening up to her is definitely one of them. One woman in my survey said to me, "Nothing makes me feel closer to my husband than when he tells me what's bothering him or shares his dreams or fears. I know how hard this is for him, but even if he does it just a little bit, it makes me feel like he really loves and trusts me, like I'm his best friend." One way a man can allow a woman entry into your world is by communicating about what's going on with you and your life. Also, involve her in your decisions. Let her know your needs. Tell her, especially when you're going through a difficult time. Ask her advice. Ask her opinion. Here's another really great way to make a woman feel safe, and that is to reassure her of your love. Recently, a friend told me about a couple we knew who'd just been divorced. Both partners were in their 50s. My friend said, "I really feel sorry for Gwen. Tom will probably go out and have his pick of any woman he wants, but it's going to be a lot harder for Gwen. The men her age will be looking for 30-year-olds. When I heard this comment, I thought to myself, this is precisely one of the reasons women don't feel emotionally safe in society. Men are given the message that at any age there'll be an abundance of women available to them. As women, we know this, and no matter how good we feel about ourselves, I believe we always live with a certain deep insecurity that men will never fully understand. An insecurity born of the reality of how easy women are to leave and to replace. And again, this lack of safety goes back to our ancient roots when to keep a man meant to survive. Now today, thousands of years later, women are still keenly tuned into this need and highly sensitive to anything that appears to threaten the existence of our relationship from within or without. For this reason, I believe most women need more emotional reassurance from our partners than men could ever imagine. Reassuring a woman of your love and commitment is one of the most effective ways of making us feel emotionally safe. There's lots of ways a man can reassure the woman he loves. You can express love and appreciation for her with words. Tell her you need her in your life and explain why. You can be physically affectionate, not just before sex, but at other times. Also, check in with her frequently so she knows you're thinking of her during the day. Women love this. Each woman has her own list of what makes her feel safe or unsafe in a relationship. If you're a woman, I suggest you take some time to make your own list of what makes you feel safe and what erodes that feeling, and share it with your partner. And men, if your lover offers to show you her list, please think carefully about what it says. She's giving you an important key to understanding her heart. Let's talk about women's second need, to connect. Guys, here's a brief quiz for you. What do all the following female behaviors have in common? Reaching out and taking your hand when we're walking together. Asking you if something's wrong because you've been so quiet. Telling you in detail about our conversation with your sister. Showing you a new pair of shoes we bought on sale. The answer? They're all ways your woman is trying to connect with you. Some of these behaviors are probably things men love about women, and some are the things that drive men crazy. But they all qualify as a woman's attempt to create a sense of connection in your relationship. What does it mean to connect? I have to confess, I've never thought that word needed an explanation until a conversation I had recently with a man I know. "Can you explain something to me I've never understood?" he inquired. "What does the term connect actually mean? My girlfriend uses it all the time. We haven't connected all week," or "I had such an immediate connection with my new assistant at work." To tell you the truth, he said to me, I have no clue what she's talking about. I listened to this man who I really like and respect and realized he wasn't teasing me. He was being honest. Could it be possible that other men felt this way too? That a term that was so much a part of most women's vocabularies and the experience it defines was something that men didn't really understand? Well, I suspect the answer to this question is yes. I suspect that men often feel they are connecting with women when we feel they aren't even close. I suspect that men severely underestimate how important the experience of connecting is to a woman and how frequently we want to experience it. And I suspect also that most men dread hearing their woman say, "Honey, I don't feel like we've connected enough lately," because they aren't sure exactly what they're supposed to do about it. What is connecting? It's creating an experience of intimacy, bridging the gap between oneself and someone or something else. So much of what we do as women is about connecting, building intimate moments in both small and significant ways. It's our nature to connect. We do it without even thinking. Have you ever watched women shop in a department store? We don't just walk through and look at the items. We touch the merchandise as we pass by, feeling the fabric of a sweater, stroking the silk of a scarf, picking up a purse and turning it over in our hands. What are we doing? We're connecting. And we don't just stop at connecting with the objects being sold. No, we make conversation with the salespeople, even with other female customers. In other words, we don't just shop, we have relationships. Now, none of this may seem unusual until you watch men in a store and observe the difference. Most men, if they must be in a store to begin with, unless it's an electronic store, of course, move through the store as if they're maneuvering their way through a minefield in battle. They try to avoid touching anything, even when they're considering buying it. If they could purchase an item without any contact at all, they probably would. Unlike women, the men are trying to avoid much connection of any kind. Their nature is to be more autonomous. Why is connecting so important to women? Perhaps it's because we give birth to children and thus have been genetically programmed to connect as a way to ensure that we will be good and nurturing mothers. Or perhaps it's because, as we discussed earlier, women put love first and connection is the way love expresses itself. Women understand that connection creates intimacy, and intimacy feeds our heart. And perhaps, too, it goes way back thousands of years to the genesis of our socialization as women, when our value to a man or a community was in our ability to harmonize and create bonds of cooperation. Our success with a mate or within a tribe, indeed our very survival, was dependent on our ability to connect. So for all of these reasons, when a woman feels connected, she feels safe. She's aligned. She's supported. She's not alone. And the reverse is also true. The sense of disconnection creates a feeling of fear and loss. I think men know and accept this secret about how women like to create connection with other women, with our girlfriends, our sisters, our mothers, our daughters. What men often don't realize is how essential it is for us to create this same kind of intimate connection with them. I remember hearing a comment once from a really traditional guy who was married to an acquaintance of mine. He said, "My wife always talks about wanting more intimacy in her life, and I tell her that's what her female friends are for, right?" I say, wrong. When we feel connected to the man we love, it's as if our hearts have been joined by an emotional pipe or cable, and love and support flow back and forth between the two, making us feel like a unit, a team. Instead of walls or barriers, we experience doorways and openings that invite the other person in. We feel welcomed into the deepest part of our lover, and this is what creates the powerful experience of intimacy. This kind of intimacy born of connection allows a woman to mentally relax, to give wholeheartedly, to feel safe. In fact, connection is one of the most effective ways to create the kind of emotional safety we talked about earlier. On the other hand, to feel disconnected in a relationship is to feel cut off from the man we love, to feel that the cord between our hearts has been severed, or at least is temporarily out of order. Women crave connection then because we understand that the price of disconnection is too high, and we dread paying it. When women sense a disconnection, we often reach out, attempting to reconnect with affection or conversation, anything that will restore the harmonious feeling between ourselves and our mate. Remember, since women put love first, we, in some sense, consider ourselves the guardian of our relationship, responsible for maintaining that emotional connection. Therefore, connecting with our mate becomes the way we manifest our commitment to keeping the love alive. Now, most of the time when men think about connecting, they mean bonding. Bonding is the most common way men feel close to one another. They share a communal activity. They meet for a set of racquetball or watch a football game on TV. On the other hand, when women say they've connected with each other, we usually mean we've experienced intimacy. What's the difference between bonding and intimacy? Bonding is a shared experience of connection which includes physical closeness or proximity. Intimacy, on the other hand, is a shared experience of connection which includes emotional closeness, not just physical, and mutual vulnerability. How does this difference between bonding and intimacy affect men and women in our relationships? In every possible way. This distinction between bonding and intimacy was a revelation to me when I figured it out. See, all my life I've never understood why men thought they were being intimate, when, in my opinion, they weren't at all. In my own relationships, I can recall so many moments of confusion about this. Maybe I'd be on vacation with a partner and after a few days I'd find myself depressed. Even though I was having a good time, I wasn't feeling we were really connecting. However, when I tried to explain this to him, he didn't seem to get what I was saying. We're doing lots of fun things, he'd explain. What more do you want? Looking back, I can see now what the problem was. We were bonding, but not connecting intimately. To the man, this seemed perfectly acceptable, and he didn't feel the need for anything more. But like many women, I needed a more intimate kind of connection on the inside. Where do men learn to bond rather than to be intimate? They learn it from their own fathers, and from the way society encourages boys to be together as opposed to how girls get to interact with one another. See, traditionally, boys are taught from a very early age that their value is in doing things, whereas girls are taught that their value is not just in doing, but also in relating. Imagine, for instance, two small boys playing harmoniously together with trucks on the floor. Their parents will notice this and say, "Very good, kids. You're playing nicely." Imagine two small girls sitting side by side, giggling and telling secrets for hours. Their parents notice this and say, "Very good, girls." Now, reverse the scene. Imagine two small boys sitting side by side, giggling and telling secrets for hours. Something about it is unsettling, isn't it? Why? Because we're used to seeing little girls connect by being intimate with one another, but we aren't used to seeing little boys connect with intimacy. True connection doesn't just mean coexistence or bonding. It involves much more than just being with the person. Connection requires intimacy. Please understand that I'm not saying there's anything wrong with bonding. Bonding is an essential part of a relationship between two people, and it's an important way a couple connects with one another. But for the love affair to really thrive, it also needs a strong component of intimacy. Many of the same things we've already discussed about making a woman feel safe also apply here about how to make her feel connected. Spending time together, verbal reassurance, a man opening up his inner world to her. In fact, most of the information throughout this program, whether it's about sex, communication, or other topics, all include ways a man can connect and be intimate with his mate. And I'll discuss this in more detail later. But for now, here are 3 great ways to create connection and intimacy. First, communicate with us. For women, connection is very much about communication. Yes, most women are traditionally more verbal than most men, but one of the fastest and most effective ways to connect with a woman is with words. Words build a bridge between a man's inner world and the heart of the woman he loves, and they create instant intimacy. Guys, what do women want you to communicate about? Of course, you already know the answer. Everything. We want to know about your work and your worries, your dreams, your fears, your ups and your downs. Remember, emotional connection is created when you share what's inside of you with your partner. And there's only one way to do that. That's communication. As one woman said to me, when my boyfriend shares things with me he doesn't share with anyone else, it makes me feel special and loved. I know he wouldn't open up to me like that if he didn't really cherish me. If communicating with a woman makes her feel connected, not communicating with her about important things definitely creates a feeling of being disconnected. When a man keeps things from me, one woman told me, and doesn't share something important that's going on with him, I feel discounted, like we're in 2 different worlds and he's put a wall between us. See, withholding feelings or information from your partner is not a harmless act. It creates a sense of disconnection between you and eventually destroys the intimacy. Let's talk about the second way women feel connected. Women feel connected and intimate when a man includes us in the process of his life. Remember my analogy before about the love room? I talked about how men tend to compartmentalize their intimate relationship from the rest of their life, checking in when they're ready for love or sex. Well, one of the negative consequences of this compartmentalization is that men often don't include their partners in the other rooms, such as the workroom or the health room. They either figure that we're not interested or, out of habit, don't make the effort to share what's going on. What's the result? Women end up feeling excluded from so much of what makes up our mate's world and very disconnected. One of the most powerful ways to create an intimate connection with your partner and make her really feel loved is to include her in the process of your life. And that means sharing the details of your daily experiences. Talk about your everyday experiences. This invites her more deeply into your life, and it links your two separate worlds into one. Including your partner in your life, guys, also means informing her about problems or difficulties you're facing. An emotionally healthy woman will feel even closer to you when you share your difficulties because she'll realize you're opening your heart to her. Remember, shared vulnerability creates intimacy. Besides, hiding problems never works. She's going to feel it anyway, and the act of not reaching out to her will make her feel you don't value her. Including your partner in your life also means involving her in decisions you need to make, especially ones that affect her. See, a lot of times men internalize their decision-making process and they don't discuss it with their partner. Women end up feeling very left out, very disconnected. Here's the third way to make women feel connected. We feel connected when men do any of the things that make us feel safe. Letting a woman into your world, spending time with her, reassuring her. When a woman feels safe, she automatically feels connected. In fact, they also make her feel valued, the third of a woman's 3 secret needs. So guys, when you make the effort to do any of these, you get 3 results for the price of 1. Now let's talk about the third need every woman has, to feel valued. Just last week, one of my best friends called me up to complain about her boyfriend of 3 years. It happened again, she began in an irritated tone. Danny had lunch with our friend Susie and apparently went on and on to her about how much he loves me, how terrific I am, and how happy he is. Well, that sounds great, I said. I don't understand why you're so upset. I'll tell you why, she said, because Danny never says those things to me in person. Sadly enough, I don't think my friend is alone. In my many years of working with couples, I've come to the conclusion that most men highly underestimate one of women's 3 essential needs. Our need to feel valued. And they become lazy about expressing how important their partner is to them. Over and over again, I've met women who complain that they don't feel their mate really appreciates or values them. Then I discover when I talk to the guy that actually he really does value her, but he just doesn't let her know this through his speech and his behavior. Why is feeling valued one of a woman's most important secret needs? Well, it's related to the other 2 needs we discussed, a woman's need to feel safe and to feel connected. See, let's go back to our ancient ancestors and recall how essential it was for a woman to feel safe, right? How her sense of safety was tied up to her survival. What could really ensure a woman's safety with her mate? If he valued her, she would feel safe, because then he'd be more likely to stay with her. And so she did all she could to increase her value in his eyes. She tried to be a caring mother, a good cook, and sew the hides well and make him happy in every way. And when her mate expressed his satisfaction with her, acknowledging her value in his life, she felt safe. Throughout history, women have been seen for their value, actually. The value of their father's property, the value of their dowry, the value of their family ties, the value of their youth and beauty, and thus their ability to bear healthy children. And yes, times have changed for many of us women in modern societies. We're no longer bartered for land or married off for financial reasons. But what has remained is the feeling deep within a woman that she wants and needs her man to value her. Like so many women who consider ourselves strong and independent, I too have struggled throughout my life with this need to feel valued by a man. It shouldn't matter what he thinks of you, one part of me insists. And deep in my soul, I know that ultimately it doesn't. But as it affects the day-to-day experience of my relationship, I can't pretend that I don't need the validation and approval my partner's love gives me, nor can I hide the fact that when I don't feel valued by the man I love, it brings out my worst fears and insecurities. And I've spoken to many very successful, very high-powered women about this secret need we have to know our man sees and appreciates our value. You'd think that a woman who's a well-known actress or a renowned physician or a multimillionaire would have so much self-confidence from having accomplished great things in her life that everyday gestures of appreciation and respect from her partner wouldn't make much of a difference to her. But they do. To a woman, being valued means that a man values her presence in his life, that she makes a difference in the quality of his existence, and that, without her, something would be missing. One woman wrote in my survey, "I feel valued when my husband makes it clear that he'd be unhappy if he couldn't be with me." What she describes is the need women have to believe our man knows we're making a unique contribution to his life, and that he doesn't want to lose us. See, I truly believe that most men have no idea how much women need to feel valued, how much we want to feel that we make a positive difference in your lives in both small and significant ways. This is especially true, guys, when men see their woman as competent or strong. They wrongly assume that this confidence means we already feel so good about ourselves that we don't need them to tell us how wonderful we are, but of course we do. There's an old joke where the wife says to her husband, "George, do you love me?" And George answers, "I'm here, aren't I?" Well, as amusing as this may be, it's unfortunately one of the misunderstandings men have about women. That once they've made a commitment to be in a steady relationship or live with us or get married, we should know from that moment on how much they appreciate us and not bother them anymore. Guys, a woman needs more than just your participation, your presence in the relationship to feel you value her. We need you to demonstrate your appreciation of our value through actions and express your appreciation through words. Sorry, guys, but just showing up isn't enough unless you want to turn your woman into a needy, insecure basket case. Here are 4 secrets for making the woman you love feel valued. First, show her that her happiness is a priority for you. What do I mean by this? Well, a few years ago I made up a joke for my women's seminars. Here's how the joke goes. Question: what do men and women have in common? Answer: they both spend their time thinking about how to make the man happy. Sorry, I couldn't resist, but guys, before you get reactive, let me explain myself. Most women are so used to putting love first and trying to please that we're always thinking about what will make our man happy. And to be blunt, a lot of men are also thinking about how to make themselves happy, not having been trained to focus on their partner in the same way women have. The result is that men often have a habit of being more self-absorbed than they want to be or even realize they are. It's not that women don't think our men want to make us happy. It's just that we often feel this falls very low on his list of priorities. He'll get around to focusing on it after he handles his work, his recreational activities, or when we finally make such a fuss that he decides he better pay attention. So guys, how can you show your mate that her happiness is a priority to you? It's really not that complicated. Here are some of the suggestions women gave me to pass on to you. First, know what's important to your woman and go out of your way to do those things. For instance, if you know your wife tends to get stressed out putting the kids to bed at night, offer to help before she asks you. Or if you know it makes your girlfriend happy when you talk to her first thing in the morning before you go to work, call her just for a minute to say hi. Women are always giving you cues, if not specific requests, for how to make us feel happy and appreciated, so pay attention. Try what we suggest. These things usually take a very small amount of time and effort, but the result will be significant in the eyes of the woman you love. You might also try asking a woman what she would like you to do that would make her happy. See, women are usually the ones who say to our mates, "Honey, what would you like to do tonight?" or "Where would you like to eat?" We can be experts at being accommodating, checking out what our partner wants before we reveal our own preferences. So when a man takes this role with us, we're ecstatic. He asked me what I wanted to do tonight, we think to ourselves. I feel so pampered, so taken care of. Yes, it's really that easy. I'm not exaggerating, guys. As one woman wrote to me, "When my boyfriend knows what's important to me and goes out of his way to do it, I feel so loved because he's showing me he cares about what I think and feel." Now here's a secret way to score a big jackpot and make your woman feel really, really valued. Sit down with her and ask, "Darling, is there anything I can do to make you happier?" Okay, guys, before you roll your eyes in disbelief, think about the question. If you really love your partner, don't you want to know what would make her happier? So why not ask her instead of trying to figure it out for yourself? Finally, one way to show a woman she's a priority is by giving her your time. When you plan time with your partner, she feels you've made her important, that her happiness is valuable to you. Don't make her beg for it. Go out of your way to share your time, even if it's in little doses. More than any present, it will make her feel special and treasured. Here's another way to make women feel valued. Show interest in her life. Guys, I hate to say this, but sometimes men can be unbelievably self-absorbed and self-centered. I know men don't mean to be that way, and they're usually really surprised when it's pointed out to them because they really have good intentions. But remember, most men aren't trained to be focused on caring for the needs of others the way women are. So it's easy to fall into a selfishness trap without knowing it. It's for this reason that I even have to remind guys to show interest in their women's lives. That women need to feel valued this way. Sometimes, guys, you just simply forget. Pay attention to what's going on with her. Do you know that if a woman went on a TV game show with her husband and one of her best girlfriends, her girlfriend might win the prize if the test was about which one of them knew the woman better? That's because her friend probably pays much closer attention to the details of what's going on in the woman's life than even her husband does. So guys, ask her questions about the activities that are important to her. Ask her for updates on the events of her life. Check back with her on how things went after an event is over. Bring up topics you know she's been wanting to talk about with you. A little effort on your part will make her feel as if you care about what she cares about and that you really value her. Try asking a woman what she's thinking and feeling. One of the ways a woman often tries to enter a man's inner world is by asking him, "What are you thinking about, honey?" For the record, let me just say I am well aware that most men hate that question. It puts men on the spot to come up with an instant answer and probes into areas many men don't want to discuss. But as women, our intention in asking is to let our mate know that we care about what's going on inside of you. So when you ask a woman, "What are you thinking?" or "What are you feeling?" it's an easy way to show your interest in her life. She'll truly appreciate your effort, and you'll probably find out a lot more about her than you realized. Here's our third secret about how to make a woman feel valued. Show her you need her and that you value her input. If a man asked me to choose one thing he could do to make his partner feel loved and valued, I would say that he should find a way to tell and show her how much he needs her. Do you know that most women have no idea how much their man truly needs them in his life? Time and time again in my work with couples, a woman will tell me how much she's hurting because her husband doesn't love her as much as she loves him, or he doesn't seem to need her at all. He wouldn't miss her if she was gone. But when I talk to the husband, I'm surprised to hear him profess deep love for his wife and confess how much he does need her. If men do need us so much, why don't women know about it? Perhaps, guys, it's because you don't show or tell us. Men are so interested sometimes in appearing self-sufficient and independent. The idea that they need their partner can be a little unsettling, even frightening. But the result is that often you unconsciously try to prove to yourself that you really don't need your sweetheart as much as you do. So, you don't ask for her help or her support, you discount her advice, you leave her out of the decision-making process. And how do these behaviors make a woman feel? Like you don't need, respect, or value us at all. And this really hurts. So find opportunities to tell the woman you love that you need her, whether it's letting her know you miss her when you aren't together, or sharing the fact that you can't imagine your life without her. Let her contribute to you and your life. You know, many men have a difficult time receiving from women, even from the women they love. There are many reasons for this: the need to feel autonomous, a fear of being controlled. But in the end, the result is the same. A woman feels shut out, as if what she has to offer isn't valuable. When you allow a woman to contribute to you in your life, she feels like she's made a difference, like she matters. What are some of the ways you can open up to receiving a woman's contribution to your life? Ask her opinion on how you can best handle a situation. Ask her opinion on politics. Ask her opinion on the house. Ask her opinion on anything. This shows her that you value what she thinks and that you're interested in her views. Allow your mate to be your teacher. Be willing to learn from her in the areas in which she's more masterful than you. Perhaps she's great at organizing, or playing tennis, or meditating. So honor these talents and abilities by asking her to share her skills with you. And don't forget to tell her how much she's contributing to your life. Another reminder: ask for help and advice, and don't refuse it when she offers. Men can be so proud and stubborn. I'm sorry to say it so bluntly, but guys, you know it's true. Because somewhere in the last several thousand years, the male brain was programmed to believe that if you received help in doing something, the accomplishment wouldn't count as much, or you wouldn't get the same credit. Therefore, figuring things out alone seemed much more admirable and made you a bigger and better man. The result of this erroneous way of thinking is that it's usually difficult for most men to ask for help or guidance, especially from the woman they love. You know, this is one of the biggest complaints I hear from women about their man. When you don't allow us to be there for you, we feel left out of your process, and the painful message we get is that there's nothing valuable that you think we could offer you. Now, guys, I know that every primal fear cell in your body screams, "Don't tell a woman how freaked out you are. She'll use it against you." Maybe some disturbed women will, but most of us won't. Most of us, if you give us a chance, will simply do our best to be supportive, to be smart where we feel our ideas may be helpful, to be caring and compassionate. Perhaps in the end what we say won't make a difference or help you find a solution to your problem, but I promise that the hug and the kiss we give you will make you feel just a little bit better, and we'll feel like we were able to contribute something to you during a hard time, even if it's just our love. The fourth secret for making a woman feel valued is show her that you don't take her for granted. How can he treat me like this if he loves me? Have you ever found yourself pondering this question about your partner, ladies? I know I have, and so have most women at one time or another. Over the years, through my profession and in my own relationships, I've learned an amazing fact about men that answers that question. Men don't always see the connection between how they behave towards women and how we end up feeling in the relationship. I know this sounds really strange, but it's true. Perhaps this explains why men with perfectly good hearts often appear to be clueless about why their mate is upset with them. How can she think I don't appreciate her, that I take her for granted? A man will ask me when we're discussing his wife's unhappiness. I'm crazy about her. As I talk more with him, I discover that indeed he does adore his wife. But then she recites a list of things he does that make her feel taken for granted. He ignores her constant requests for help with the kids. He doesn't offer to prepare meals even though they both work full-time. He's skimpy with praise or romantic expressions. And then I can see her point. When I confront her mate on these issues, He usually agrees, you're right, I know I'm not good at those things. But I don't see what that has to do with her feeling I don't love her or appreciate her. And he's not kidding. He really doesn't see it. What's going on here? It relates to how men compartmentalize their life, as we discussed earlier. This husband really does not understand the cause and effect relationship between the ways he doesn't respect his wife's time or energy and any possible feeling it might bring up in her of being taken for granted. Why not? Because he doesn't experience a connection between how he feels about her and how he treats her. See, to guys, their feelings about their partner are often in one room of their consciousness, and their behavioral habits and everyday decisions are in other rooms. In other words, as bizarre as it sounds, how a man treats a woman may or may not always have something to do with how he feels about us. But guys, how you treat us and everything you do does matter. Here are some suggestions for how to show the woman you love that you don't take her for granted. First, respect her time and energy. Do you know what women really hate in a relationship? When their partner behaves as if his time or energy is way more valuable than hers. I hear this complaint frequently. Sometimes my husband just sits there while I'm sweating to death running after the kids, a woman will say. It's as if he doesn't even notice that I need his help. Other times I come home late from my job, he's been home for hours already and hasn't even started dinner. It makes me feel like he doesn't care at all about my time. What can men do? Ask her if she needs help with the children or the house. Don't wait for your wife to collapse. Offer your help even when she doesn't ask or seem to need it. Just because we seem to be handling everything doesn't mean we're happy about it. We'll be so appreciative that you want to contribute. Another thing to do is to respect her time and schedule by communicating responsibly. If you know your partner's waiting for you to call or to finalize some plans, don't just ignore her without communicating in some way. Telephone to say you can't really talk until you finish a project, or let her know you do want to plan a weekend away but can't discuss it for a few more days. Tell her when you're going to be late. Finally, don't push a woman's limits, even if she doesn't push back. Guys, don't take your partner for granted, even if she allows you to. Don't push her, don't test her. Don't see what you can get away with and become lazy or disrespectful in the relationship. As women, we're fighting hard every day against our own conditioning that advises us not to stand up for ourselves or not to scare a man off with too many expectations. So we need to work on healing old emotional wounds from mistreatment in the past. But men, you can really help by treating us with respect even during those times when we would settle for less. Remember, there's no victory in getting away with giving less than you should in love. We've been talking about the 3 secret needs every woman has: the need to feel safe, the need to feel connected, and the need to feel valued. We covered a lot of material, and I know it's not easy to remember all of it, especially if you're in the middle of a difficult moment in your relationship. So here are 3 simple questions you can ask yourself in emotionally stressful times. Guys, when you notice your partner's exhibiting symptoms of being unhappy or unfulfilled, ask yourself these questions. First, what can I do to make her feel safe right now? Second, what can I do to make her feel connected right now? Finally, what can I do to make her feel valued right now? Then try one of the suggestions we've discussed. Remember the amount of effort it will take to do or say something that will help her make an emotional shift is nothing compared to the amount of energy you'll have to expend dealing with her continuing to be upset. Addressing one of her 3 secret needs is a small investment with a really big payoff. And ladies, it's important for you to realize that sometimes in our love life, we discover we're feeling awful and we aren't sure why. When you suddenly find yourself suffering in your relationship, it may very well be because one or more of your 3 basic needs isn't being met. In some way, you aren't feeling safe or connected or valued. So ask yourself the same questions. What do I need to feel safe right now? What do I need to feel connected right now? What do I need to feel valued right now? The more familiar you become with your 3 secret needs, the more you'll be able to honor them and create the kind of life you deserve. In this next part of the program, we're going to be talking about love, intimacy, and communication. No beauty treatment, no expensive outfit, no fancy jewels can make a woman look as radiant as when she's feeling truly loved by the man in her life. Nor can any of these things cover up the look of sadness, heartache, and emptiness a woman has when she's not feeling loved. We can tell when we gaze at ourselves in the mirror what our heart is feeling. It speaks to us through our face, through our eyes, and it never lies. And when we see other women, we can see their hearts as well, and we know when a woman is loved, and when, on the other hand, she's hungry for love. What does it take to put that loved look on a woman's face? I call it feeding a woman's heart, making sure she's not starving for love. It's learning how to be a real lover in the true sense of the word, not just in the bedroom, but outside the bedroom. There's a famous research study that focused on orphanages in Europe, which were populated with infants who'd been abandoned at birth, many of them really sick and malnourished. The study came out because the doctors at the orphanages noticed a marked difference in the growth weight of the babies. Some babies seemed to be developing and thriving at a much faster rate than the others, who mysteriously didn't seem to be doing well at all. Well, at first the doctors were puzzled. All the infants were being fed the same formula and given the same medicine. All were kept in the same nursery, exposed to the same amount of light and the same schedule. Why were some developing so rapidly and some struggling? Then the doctors discovered something very interesting. Several nurses assigned to certain babies were in the habit of giving the infants more than just the required medical care. They picked up the infants, held them, talked to them sweetly, stroked their heads, and sang songs to them. The other nurses were more perfunctory in their duties, and though they were gentle with the infants, didn't really do more than their job required. Sure enough, when the doctors analyzed the data, they found that the infants who were being held and loved had a much higher growth rate than the babies who were not touched or talked to. What conclusion can we draw from this? It has to do with the miraculous power of love. From the time we enter this world, we need more than food, water, and air to live a meaningful life. We need love. When our heart is fed with intimacy, affection, and communication, this primal hunger for love is satisfied. But when we're deprived of these things, our heart is hungry, and we become what I call love-starved. I believe that many men and women are walking around love-starved and don't even know it. They're hungry for attention, for affection, for appreciation, for love, just like those infants who were not touched or nurtured. Now, sadly, I'm not just talking about single people, but people in a relationship with a partner who, perhaps without realizing it, is emotionally starving them by not adequately feeding their heart. When we're in a relationship with a man and we're love-starved, we're not getting enough of the things we need to feel safe, valued, and connected, and we end up feeling a deep emptiness inside of us. How do many of us deal with that emptiness? We try to fill it and ourselves up with other things. Food, alcohol, drugs, shopping, work, taking care of people, you know the list. The truth, however, is that there's really only one thing we're missing, one thing we're hungry for, and it can't be replaced by experiences that give us a temporary high or a fleeting sense of fullness. What we're missing is love. Now, please know I'm not saying that if you aren't in a relationship, you're love-starved and all dried up. The truth is, if you're loving yourself and regularly connecting with people you care for, your heart is being fed. What I'm referring to is what happens in an intimate relationship when, in order for the bond between you to remain strong, you need a certain amount of love to flow back and forth. When your heart isn't being fed by a partner who's committed to nurturing and loving you, that's when you feel love-starved. Learning how to feed your partner's heart is one of the most important skills you need to master in a relationship. What happens when you're love-starved? Well, how do you feel when you haven't eaten for a long time and you're just starving? I know how I feel: cranky, irritable, impatient, and overreactive. Well, guess what? When you starve your partner emotionally, he or she is going to become cranky, irritable, impatient, and hypersensitive. In fact, you're going to turn your partner into everything you hate. Let me tell you about a couple called Joyce and Guy. They'd been married for 6 years, and they knew their relationship was in a serious crisis. Joyce used to be this really cheerful, enthusiastic person, and when she'd first met Guy, she was sure he was the man of her dreams. But lately, she'd been feeling the opposite. She was always angry, sarcastic, and she'd totally lost her sex drive. Guy kept telling himself she was going through a phase and threw himself even more into his work. But as time went by, the situation just deteriorated, and finally they both admitted they'd better get some help or they'd end up divorced. I sat there listening to Joyce complain about Guy, that he worked too hard, that he didn't appreciate how much she did around the house, that he spent more of his free time with his friends than he did with her. And the more she talked, the more angry she became until finally she burst into tears. "Why are you crying?" I asked Joyce. "Because I sound like a total bitch," she retorted. "And it's true. That's what I've become. I'm crying because I never used to be this way, and I hate myself, but I don't understand what's happening to me." As I asked some more questions about their relationship, the problem became crystal clear to me. Joyce was suffering from a severe case of love starvation. Her husband was a sweet, well-meaning guy who hadn't seen his own parents be loving towards each other, and therefore he didn't really know how to behave in a nurturing, affectionate way in his marriage. He owned his own company, he worked long hours, he didn't make much time for anything else. The result was that unintentionally, he neglected Joyce. He didn't give her heart what it needed to feel sufficiently fed: affection, communication, intimacy, all the things we've discussed. And so little by little, Joyce became increasingly love-starved and increasingly bitchy. Like her husband, she too wasn't aware of what was going on. She didn't know how to ask him for what she needed, so rather than expressing her feelings, she acted them out. The result was that the marriage was in a state of emergency. When I explained all of this to Joyce and Guy, believe it or not, they felt relieved. See, Joyce had been worried that something was really wrong with her. Once she had a context for her feelings and an understanding that she was reacting to feeling love-starved, her panic toned down into concern, and she was able to begin expressing her true feelings to her husband. And as for Guy, he'd been terrified that the sweet woman he married had just been a cover for Joyce's true nature, which eventually revealed her to be an angry bitch. Even though he wasn't thrilled to find out he'd been unknowingly starving her heart, he felt hopeful about making some changes because now at least he knew the problem was solvable. I've worked with thousands of couples like Joyce and Guy where the man doesn't realize he's starving his partner's heart, and the woman herself doesn't recognize the signs that she's love-starved and therefore can't even articulate her needs to her mate clearly. Even though the situation they've gotten themselves into is frustrating, upsetting, and threatening to their relationship, it's not their fault. They just don't know how to do it differently. How many of you were taught how to have a wonderful, passionate relationship by watching your parents relate? Not too many, I'm sure. See, most of us didn't learn healthy relationship skills from our parents who, believe it or not, were actually our love teachers. Whether you realize it or not, you formed the majority of your love habits long before you moved out of the house to live on your own. And those habits were created by interacting with and observing your parents. This is the first reason we unknowingly starve our partner's heart, because like Guy, we don't know any better. No one taught us the importance of feeding our relationship in the same way we'd feed our child or our plants or anything else that we wanted to grow. Even if we realize how important this is, we probably have never been taught how to actually do it. Here's the second reason you may starve love. You may have been emotionally starved as a child and not received the affection or nurturing you should have. See, if you learn to exist on occasional crumbs of love, you may only give crumbs of love to your partner because you don't know how to give anymore. Or you may be the one who is love-starved in your relationship, like Joyce, and not even know it simply because it's what you're used to. Finally, there are some of us who starve our partner's heart as a way to exert power in the relationship. You feel as though your partner isn't giving in to what you want enough of the time, so you withhold your love and affection as a sort of punishment. When she pleases you, you respond with love. When she doesn't, you pull away. Not only is this an unhealthy dynamic, but it never gives you the result you want. People aren't like animals who can be trained to respond to commands by withholding or bestowing rewards. Ultimately, a woman or man who's treated like this will get smart and leave. So, why is it sometimes difficult for women to recognize that we're hungry for love? Why do we often settle for being love-starved and not let our partner know how much we're hurting? We do it all the time, don't we, ladies? We put ourselves and our feelings second, and we put his first. Or we discount our own needs and convince ourselves that we're just being too demanding. Now, I'm not talking about the normal give and take that should exist in any relationship, but rather about how women become too self-sacrificing with our mates and settle for being love-starved without even realizing it. It's not that a woman wakes up in the morning and says to herself, I think I'll sacrifice my needs today until I become completely cranky and empty inside. No, most of the time, we aren't even aware that we're doing this. But we do sacrifice, more than is healthy and good for us or for our relationship. Here's one of my favorite examples to help both men and women understand how unconsciously women sacrifice. I call it the fish quiz. It's designed for women to take and men to learn from. Ladies, imagine that you've decided to make dinner for you and your husband, and you're preparing fish as the main course. You take 2 pieces of fish out of the refrigerator and put them in a pan to be sautéed. While the fillets cook, you get the rest of the meal ready. When you go back over to the pan to finish up the fish, you notice that one piece kind of fell apart while cooking. We'll call it the messy piece. Since it's in broken sections, it doesn't look as nice as the other piece, which remained perfectly intact. You remove each piece of fish from the pan and place them onto separate plates. Okay, you're standing in front of the table where your husband is already seated for dinner, with 1 plate of fish in one hand and 1 in the other. Okay, here comes the quiz. Which plate do you put down in front of your husband? The one with the messy piece of fish or the one with the perfect piece of fish? Well, I've given the fish quiz to thousands and thousands of people in my seminar audiences, always with the same results. By the time I get to the part of the story where one piece falls apart in the pan, the women are already nodding their heads and smiling because they know just where I'm going. The guys, on the other hand, are staring at me with clueless looks on their faces. They can't figure out why we're talking about fish in the first place. And when I say you're standing in front of your husband with 2 plates in your hands, the women all start to laugh and clap, and the men are looking at us like we're crazy, or in some private joke from home economics class that no one ever told them. How many of you would give your husband the nice piece of fish, I ask, and all the female hands go up in the air. And guess what? Even then, the guys still have no idea what we're talking about, or what the point of all this fish talk is. The point to a woman is obvious. Most of us wouldn't dream of giving our husband the messy piece of fish, right? Why? It goes against everything we've been taught, consciously or unconsciously, about how to behave in a relationship. Just the thought of putting the messy piece down in front of our man gives us the creeps, unless we're really pissed off at him about something. We would instinctively take the messy piece so he could have the nice one. When I tell the men in my audiences to imagine themselves taking the fish quiz and ask them which piece they'd give to their wife, the answers and comments just completely crack me up, and the women too. The men ask, first of all, could you explain why the piece that fell apart isn't as good as the other one? Or they say, if both pieces are the same size, what's the difference and who gets which one? Of course, the purpose of the fish quiz is not to teach you the do's and don'ts of the culinary arts. It's to make a point about how naturally women sacrifice without even realizing it, and how uncomfortable we can become when we don't sacrifice and think we should. There is nothing wrong with giving your mate a nicer piece of fish, although frankly, most of them wouldn't even notice the difference. It's a sweet gesture that you make when you love and care for someone. But it becomes a different issue when we're not just talking about giving up the perfect piece of fish, but giving up your feelings, your needs, your happiness, all in the name of being a good woman and sacrificing. When men ask if women are somehow taught about keeping the messy piece of fish to ourselves, they're actually not far off from the truth. The habit of self-sacrifice for women is inherited. Many of us grew up watching our mothers and grandmothers sacrifice their talents, their dreams, even their happiness and self-respect in order to be a support system for our fathers, or to keep the family together, or to not make trouble. Often in our society, we actually celebrate women like this and glamorize their sacrifice as some kind of wonderful achievement. We say things like, Joe's wife endured so much pain and unhappiness during the marriage, but she did raise 3 lovely children and help Joe build a business. What's the hidden message in this comment? That this woman was great because she sacrificed her desires and happiness for the sake of her husband or family. Now, there's nothing wrong with giving up our needs some of the time in order to make others happy. This is actually the sign of a generous and highly developed heart. But I'm talking about something else here. When we sacrifice too much of the time, and we lose ourselves in the process. See, each time a woman sacrifices a piece of her feelings, her needs, her own dreams, she gives away a piece of herself. The more she sacrifices, the more pieces disappear, and the less of her remains until one day she wakes up and feels empty. Men, I'm not saying any of this is necessarily your fault. As one guy said to me, hey, I don't ask for the perfect piece of fish. She's the one who tells herself she needs to give it to me. And of course, you're right. Often, it's not the man in our life, but the pressure we put on ourselves as women not to appear selfish that causes a woman to be self-sacrificing. And because we're self-sacrificing, we don't always tell you guys what we need or how starved we are for love until it's too late. So guys, here's what you can do. Pay attention to warning signs that your partner's doing too much, giving too much, and not receiving enough. In other words, that she's love-starved. What are some of the signs a woman may be love-starved? She's irritable, she's depressed, needy, fanatically busy, sexually turned off, emotionally distant. She's eating poorly or too much, numbing herself with drugs or alcohol. All of these are possible warning signs. Don't wait for your woman to fall apart or blow up or break down to be concerned about her. Remember, we probably won't tell you how bad things are, how stressed out we feel, how emotionally exhausted we've become on our own. Look for signs that we're giving more than we're getting, that we're sacrificing too much. The second thing men can do is to ask a woman how she's doing. You may not even notice how many times a day your wife or girlfriend asks you how you're doing, how you're feeling, how your day went, and other questions designed to make sure you're okay, to determine if you need anything she can give you. But if you're like most men, you probably don't check in with her like this. Ask her how her meeting went, how the kids behaved, how her car's running after the checkup, how her headache is, how she's feeling about the conversation she had with her sister. Ask her anything. One common mistake guys make is assuming that if they can't fix the situation, why bother asking their partner about it? As one man said to me, look, I know I can't do anything about the problem my wife is going through at work, so I guess I don't ask her how she's doing, because no response I give her is going to make a difference. But here's what you need to remember. Even if a woman tells you she's not doing well and you can't say anything to make her feel better, just the fact that you asked will feed her heart and make her feel more loved. Your concern will always make a difference. Third, ask a woman what you can do for her. Women are used to feeling we have to do everything ourselves, from taking care of the house, looking after the kids, making the plans, organizing and coordinating everyone's schedule, buying and cooking food, often on top of holding down a part or full-time job. Even if we complain about this from time to time, usually we silently bear these responsibilities and tell ourselves it's just part of being a woman. So when a guy actually asks us what he can do for us, we're surprised, delighted, and supremely grateful. When my husband offers to help me put the kids to bed or straighten up the kitchen, one woman said to me, I just melt. He thinks he's being polite, but it makes me feel like he really cares. It may sound strange, but it affects me almost like foreplay. I feel so much love for him that later on, I'm definitely more in the mood to fool around, rather than feeling resentful that I had to do everything myself. Now, I admit women may not always easily relinquish these tasks to you guys since we secretly feel we can do them better. But we will be appreciative that you offered, and our heart will definitely feel fed. We've been talking throughout this program about the many ways we make our partner feel unloved or unappreciated and how all of these can starve the relationship. Here are a few more common ways you may be starving your partner and your relationship without even realizing it. First, sometimes we neglect our partner or the relationship until there's a big problem. See, think about your car. None of us would get in the habit of waiting to fill up our car with gas until it was totally empty, right? Yet that's the approach many people, especially men, often take in their love life. You wait to give the relationship attention until there's a big problem. It's not that you don't care. It's that somehow your love life gets put in the bottom of your priority list after work, hobbies, exercise, etc. And as we've seen, men don't put love first, or sometimes even second or third. It's almost as if sometimes men put off dealing with a relationship for as long as possible, like waiting until the gas gauge is almost empty before filling the tank. However, this habit can have the same result in your love life as it has with your car. Before you know it, you've run out of gas. Now, guys, I know it's not always easy and certainly not always fun to put time and energy into feeding your relationship. You'd probably rather watch a game on TV or surf the internet or even work overtime, anything to avoid hearing your woman tell you what she's not happy about. But the more you feed your partner's heart, the more you'll want to be intimate and connect because it will feel so good. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Don't wait until your partner's about to walk out the door to finally listen to her complaints. Don't wait until she's so love-starved that she shut her heart down. Don't wait until your relationship is in an emergency state to pay attention to it. Do it now. You know, at the end of our life, none of us is going to say, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. I wish I'd spent more time watching TV. I wish I'd gone to the gym more. No, I really believe we'll say, I wish I'd loved more. I wish I'd let the people I love know how much I cherish them. And that's what we're talking about here. Another way we commonly starve love in relationships is by putting the kids first. Now, I'm going to say something I feel strongly about that may not be politically correct, but I believe with all my heart that it's true. When you put your relationship with your children ahead of your relationship with your partner, you're making a mistake that could eventually destroy your marriage. Being a parent means loving and nurturing your children. But in your good intentions to always give them attention and always be there for them, you may unknowingly be starving your partner of the love she needs. I've seen this pattern occur over and over in marriages where one or both partners focuses most of their emotional attention and energy on the kids, making them the glue that holds the relationship together. One day, the kids grow to a certain age, or maybe go off to college, and the couple turns to each other and realizes they're like strangers. Their relationship is dead. How did it die? They starved it of the love, the intimacy, and the connection that all relationships need in order to survive. They gave everything to the kids and nothing to each other. And they end up with great kids and a non-existent marriage. Every time you feed your partner's heart, know that you are feeding your children's hearts as well. For the love the two of you share will overflow and bless your whole family with happiness. The greatest gift you can ever give your children is the gift of a happy and lasting marriage. But that's going to take work on your part. I hope by now you're convinced that feeding your partner's heart is essential in a relationship. So how do you do it? Well, I call it the love diet. The love diet is an easy way to remember and practice feeding your partner's heart and being a wonderful lover outside the bedroom. It's simple and it's fun. See, when you study nutrition, you learn about the basic food groups, right? Vegetables, grains, protein, dairy, and you have to have some of these each day. Well, emotional nutrition is the same. Feeding your partner's heart means making sure you give him or her all of the basic emotional food groups. What are these? I call them the 3 A's: attention, affection, and appreciation. They're the secret ingredients contained in the love diet that will fill up your partner's heart. You pay attention, you show affection, and you express appreciation. If I asked you right now how often you need to eat every day, you'd probably answer that you need to eat at least 2 or 3 times a day with a few snacks in between. Well, I'd like you to think about feeding your partner's heart in the same way with the love diet. Your partner needs 3 love meals a day. What is a love meal? It's a time each day for 3 minutes when you feed your partner's heart with 1 or more of the menu items contained in the 3 A's: attention, affection, or appreciation. I call this the 3x3 formula. 3 times a day when you choose to actively love your partner for at least 3 minutes. Think about it as 3 minutes of intimacy. Maybe it's 3 minutes in the morning together before you get out of bed, or 3 minutes on the phone in the middle of the day, or 3 minutes after the kids go to sleep. These are love meals, so just like you'd have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you have love meal number 1, 2, and 3. And even when you eat several good meals a day, you need a snack once in a while, right? Well, the same applies to feeding your partner's heart. Along with the 3x3 formula of 3 love meals a day, give your mate several little love snacks during the day. What is a love snack? It can be a kiss on the cheek or the neck when you're passing your partner, or a quick call to say I love you. It can be a compliment. All right, now you know the basics of the love diet, so here's a description of its 3 main ingredients, the 3 A's. The first A is attention. One of the most common ways we starve the heart of someone we love is by not giving them enough attention. This is why paying attention is one of the most effective ways to make your partner feel loved, and it's the first ingredient in the love diet. Paying attention means being there 100% in the moment with the person you love. Oh, I already do this, you might say. We spend lots of time together. But the truth is, spending time together doesn't necessarily mean you're really giving your partner full attention. You could be talking with her, but you're also playing with the dog. You could be sitting next to him, but you're also watching TV. That's not paying attention, and he or she will feel it. In other words, it doesn't count as a love meal. Giving your partner your attention means being fully there with her. You're not doing anything else. Look into her eyes. Ask the other person how he's doing. Listen. Hold him. Hold her. That attention will nourish your mate's heart more than you can ever imagine. Paying attention to someone you love like this tells her that she's important to you, that you value her, or value him, that for those 3 minutes, 3 times a day, the other person's the only thing that matters in the world. When you fully pay attention, precious moments of intimacy and passion can occur. Affection's the second ingredient in the love diet. It means physically connecting with your partner 3 times a day for a few minutes. Holding her hand, kissing him, stroking her hair, being physically close. When you're affectionate with your partner, you link your energies on a physical dimension and create a flow between your hearts. Remember the story about the orphans and how healing the affection is for the heart? When you show your mate physical affection, you're feeding his or her heart in a profound way. Why do some guys have a problem being affectionate? They fall prey to what I call the all-or-nothing syndrome. This is a belief that says, if I don't have time to do it all, in other words, intercourse, I'll just do nothing. And it's based on the misunderstanding that all sexual sensation has to end in orgasm. See, in the minds of some men, they think that if they get aroused, they're supposed to go ahead and have sex. So if they don't have time to go all the way, they avoid even getting excited at all, feeling it's going to be a waste. So for instance, a man's lying in bed with his wife in the morning and she reaches over and starts to cuddle with him. He begins to feel attracted and aroused, but he realizes he has to get out of bed in 5 minutes or he'll be late for work. So he pushes her away and says, "Not now, honey, I have to get up." She feels hurt and rejected. Why is her husband not wanting to be affectionate with her? And he doesn't even realize anything's wrong. Later that night, when he does have time for sex, she seems cold and uninterested, and he can't understand why. What's happening here is the all-or-nothing syndrome. He felt he didn't have time to do everything, so he wouldn't even hug or kiss his partner, feeling it could lead to nothing. But guys, affection isn't always supposed to lead to something. It's an experience of intimacy in itself. Besides, those love meals of affection will have a great effect on your sex life, as we'll hear later. The more love and intimacy you show your partner, the more turned on she will be by you, and the more she'll want to make love when you have the time. Appreciation is the third ingredient in the love diet. I know he loves me, but he doesn't appreciate me. I hear this lament from women all the time about their partners. That's because most women are starving for more appreciation from the men we love. When men hear this, they're confused. How can she say I don't appreciate her? I work hard to support her and the kids. I'm faithful. I remodeled the basement for her last year. I do lots of things to show my appreciation. Guys, what you're talking about is showing your appreciation by things you do. But what really feeds a woman's heart is hearing you express your appreciation in words. See, most women are much more verbal than men, and often things don't feel real to us until they're spoken. Knowing you appreciate us isn't always enough. We need to hear you say it. We need your words. Your words of love and praise are like precious jewels to us. We collect them and cherish them, and they make us feel valued and rich with happiness and contentment. How should you express your appreciation? Tell us what you love about us. Tell us what you appreciate that we do for you and our family. Tell us what you're proud of us for. Often men feel they're appreciating their mates even verbally, but what they don't realize is that they may not be appreciating them for the things she really needs appreciation for. In particular, women in my surveys begged me to tell men that they really want and need more appreciation for taking care of the kids in the home. So many women express the need to hear their mate appreciate them for being a good mother, or making the house beautiful, or always having his shirts cleaned and ironed. Working mothers in particular wanted their men to know that they would like to be appreciated for taking care of the kids and the house while also holding down a job. I found that it's not that men don't appreciate the efforts their wives make in these areas. It's that often women are so good at multitasking that it appears effortless for us. Thus the men just take it for granted and don't realize how hard we're working to keep it all together. It may look easy, guys, but it's not. You cannot imagine how hearing you say, "Thanks for dinner," or "I really appreciate you remembering to make my dentist appointment," actually feeds our heart with love. Here's a simple and powerful technique for feeding your partner's heart with appreciation. I call it a gratitude snack before bed. It's a way you can express your appreciation and gratitude to your partner for something she or he did that day. Get in bed, and before you go to sleep, just take a minute to thank your mate for something from the day. Thanks for watching the kids tonight so I could go to the gym. Or thanks for making my favorite pasta for dinner. Or thanks for being so patient with me this morning when I was grumpy. It's wonderful to take turns giving each other little gratitude snacks. You'll be amazed at how much you can find to be grateful for once you put your attention on it. By the way, don't be surprised if your gratitude snack turns into another kind of more physical snack. Love is, after all, the best kind of foreplay there is. I came up with the 3 A's because men so often would say to me, "I want to be a better husband, but I'm not sure what to do." Or, "I know my girlfriend needs more attention, but I don't really know exactly what she needs." The 3 A's make it simple. Just pick one: attention, affection, or appreciation, and you can't go wrong. Better yet, combine all 3 for a triple whammy of love. Feeding your partner's heart with the 3 A's is kind of like a love insurance policy. Do you know that the majority of extramarital affairs happen not because the person's looking for sex, but because they're looking for the 3 A's? When women who've been unfaithful are asked about the reasons they cheated on their mates, very few of them say, "I met a guy with a nice body," or "I wanted to have sex with my yoga instructor who seemed very limber." No, most women confess that the reason they strayed outside the relationship was that they were love-starved. They weren't getting enough attention, affection, or appreciation from their mate, and they eventually found it elsewhere. Now, this isn't an editorial comment on infidelity, but a reminder that if you make sure to give your partner love meals and love snacks every day, she won't walk around hungry looking for somewhere else to eat. If you're presently in a relationship, I really hope you try the love diet right away. Make a commitment to do it for just 1 week, 3 times a day, 3 minutes. That's just 9 minutes, using the 3 A's, a few love snacks in between. And you'll be amazed at the results. Your partner will glow with love, and you'll feel more in love. Now it's time to talk about what women want men to know about communication. Nothing is more frustrating than sitting across from the person you love the most in the world and realizing that at times you simply can't talk to him or her without some kind of tension or upset developing. If you've ever been in love, I'm sure you're all too familiar with this feeling. Why does it have to be so hard, you ask yourself? If we love each other so much, why can't we understand each other? Well, I've spent the past 30 years searching for the answer to that question. The truth is that falling in love, having sex, and figuring out how to live together all look like the easy parts of a relationship when you compare them to the ongoing challenge of trying to create consistent and harmonious communication with your partner. So many of the problems and disagreements and struggles that couples encounter stem from the fact that we don't know how to talk to each other in a way that works. We do our best, but often it isn't good enough, and we're left wondering if it's even possible for men and women to learn to speak to each other. In my book, Secrets About Men Every Woman Should Know, I told women how men think, listen, and express themselves, and suggested techniques for learning how to talk to the man you love. Well, now it's time for me to do the same favor for men. I wish every man could listen to this part of the program before his very first relationship with a woman. That's because I'm going to tell you 5 secrets about how women communicate. If you're in a relationship, this is an important part of the program to discuss together. Ladies, I think you'll find this section contains some really effective ways to explain to your mate what you've been trying to say about communicating with each other. And guys, after listening to these 5 secrets, you won't ever be able to complain that you don't understand how women communicate. Communication secret number 1. Women love to talk because it creates connection. Here's a scenario. A woman sitting on the couch with her sweetheart after dinner. He picks up the remote control, ready to turn on the television, and she turns to him and says, "Honey, let's just talk for a while." Instantly tensing up, he says, "Why, is there a problem?" Does this exchange sound familiar? If you've ever been in a relationship, I know it does. This scene is replayed millions of times each day in households all over the world as women try to talk to their partners and men try to avoid the conversation at all costs. For many men, "let's talk" are dreaded words. They hear them and immediately sigh, grunt, grit their teeth, and prepare for the worst. Whether they respond with, "What's the problem?" or "Do we have to?" or "Let me sit here in peace, I worked hard all day," the message women receive is the same. I don't want to talk to you. No matter how much we understand about men, no matter how many times we go through this, women still feel hurt and confused when a man responds this way. Why? Because we love to talk, especially to our partner. When we talk to you, it creates intimacy. It creates connection. We don't have to have a reason to want to talk other than this, the desire to feel close to the man we love. See, this is why it baffles women when we suggest talking and men react by saying, "Why, what's wrong?" Or, "Uh-oh, here we go again," as if the only reason to talk to the one you love is when there's a big problem. Guys, this is one of the most important secrets about how women communicate you need to understand. For a woman, talking is a way of loving, connecting, exchanging energy. The process of communicating itself is the goal, rather than any particular outcome. I once heard a really funny analogy to how when a woman says, "Let's talk," a man wants to know what the purpose is, as if there should be a purpose. Imagine a man says to his wife, "Let's make love," and she answers, "Why? Do you want to make a baby?" See, if a woman responded this way to a man's request to make love, he'd think she was really strange. But isn't it the same thing? Although making love can have the goal of getting a woman pregnant and creating a child, we usually do it just for the sheer joy of doing it, and not with a particular outcome in mind. In the same way, although having a conversation can have the goal of clearing up a problem or exchanging important information. Often, its purpose is in the process of connecting with words, and not for any other reason. Now, I admit, sometimes when women say, let's talk, it's indeed a precursor for dropping a verbal bomb of complaints and criticisms on our partner. I do warn women against doing this in my book, Secrets About Men Every Woman Should Know, and I suggest that instead they give their mate a verbal preview of what they'd like to talk about. Ask him if now is a good time for a discussion. But ladies, if you're in the habit of pouncing unannounced on your partner with negative feedback, he'll dread any invitation to converse, fearing that what's coming will always be unpleasant. Here's an important secret about women for both men and women to understand. Women are what I call process-oriented. It's in the process of an experience itself that we find meaning, whether or not we accomplish a specific goal. See, that's why two women can sit down and say, let's talk, and not have any agenda in mind, or why a mother can play with her child for hours without having to achieve anything. It's why we know that just being with someone we care for who's in pain will make a difference, even if we don't actually produce a helpful result. So, for instance, when I say, let's talk to my partner, much of the time, I have absolutely no goal in mind other than to share the process of communicating with him. It's almost as if I'm saying, let's make love, only with words, not with our bodies. This brings up the question that men ask me all the time. Why do women love to talk so much? Perhaps it's because we understand that one of the best ways to create intimate connections between ourselves and our sweetheart is with words. Words are like bridges that allow us to travel from our private world into our partner's and him into ours. I believe words are necessary because they take the formless energy that love is and they wrap it into little packages, like little gifts. They furnish our feelings with concrete form so they can be passed on to our mate like a present. Each time we share something about ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings, it's as if we're giving a piece of ourselves to our lover. In this way, talking is a form of making love, verbal intercourse, if you will, which is why women find it a great form of foreplay. Well, if women like to talk so much, why do men often not like to talk in the way women do? Men often have a difficult time with how much women like to talk because men are primarily goal-oriented, not process-oriented like women. Men find their value not just in participating in the process of an experience, but in achieving a specific goal, a measurable outcome. So conversations without an apparent goal often make men very uncomfortable because they seem inefficient. This is why men always say things like, is this conversation going anywhere? Does this have a point? Could you please cut to the chase? Could you get to the bottom line? Notice the emphasis on getting to a goal. This is because men communicate best when they have a focus for the conversation. They want to know the purpose of a discussion, what a woman wants or needs from them. To proceed with a discussion without knowing its purpose may seem inefficient to the male mind, which wants to accomplish something useful. Women, on the other hand, don't need a focus to enjoy talking. Just the process of participating in a conversation with someone we care about fulfills our deep need to connect. And as you'll see in our next communication secret, our style of talking may appear to be the opposite of focused. So we can't always understand why our man seems uncomfortable when we want to have a conversation, and we interpret his resistance to talking with us as a sign that he doesn't care or want to be close. I think another reason men don't always like to talk is because men don't like doing what they feel they aren't good at. See, for many men, the inner world of feelings isn't as familiar as the world of the mind. From the time they're little boys, men aren't encouraged to feel and express emotions as much as women are. And one result of this is that men often don't have the same emotional confidence that many women have. They may not be able to get in touch with feelings as rapidly as women can, or put those feelings into words, especially on command. Remember, men like to feel competent and successful, and they've been trained to define themselves through these values, so naturally, they don't like doing something that makes them feel inadequate, unskilled, or insecure. And talking about feelings and emotional issues definitely falls into this category for many men. Can you see now why, when a woman turns to her lover and enthusiastically says, "Darling, let's talk about us and the relationship," he cringes? What she thinks will be an intimate love fest, he dreads as a long session of emotional aerobics. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a boyfriend a long time ago about why he got so upset every time we had a talk. For months, I'd been trying to figure out why he hated having conversations about anything relating to us. Finally, one night, in a fit of frustration, he blurted it out. "I can't keep up with you," he said. "What do you mean?" I pleaded, not understanding what he was trying to say. He responded, "I mean, I can't keep up with you in our conversations, with your pace, how fast you figure out what you want to say, your willingness to talk about all your feelings with any of it. I feel like an amateur running a race against an Olympic athlete." I remember feeling awful at the time, but not fully understanding what this man was actually trying to tell me. Many, many years have passed since then, and looking back, now I know exactly what he meant. This was a very intelligent man, but in the realm of emotional communication, he didn't feel confident, so he avoided going there with me as much as possible. No wonder he hated to talk about our relationship. Does this sound familiar? This is why men often find talking with their mate exhausting. Women think they're just making excuses when they say this, but guys, I know you're not. It can really feel like a marathon that you don't want to be running. The third reason men don't like to talk in the way women do is that men tend to internalize their thinking process and communicate the end result. "Why doesn't my mate share more of his process with me?" women ask. "I never know what he's thinking." When I give women what I believe is the answer, they aren't always happy with what they hear. He doesn't share more of his process because he doesn't want to. Why not? Because men often prefer expressing themselves only when they're clear on exactly what they're feeling or thinking, and not before. They internalize their thinking process and wait to talk about it until they've come up with a solution or opinion they're sure about. I call this mulling, M-U-L-L-I-N-G. Men like to mull things over inside, silently and in private. Men often feel unprepared to have conversations with their partner because she wants to talk now, and that doesn't give you guys time to mull, right? Of course, women don't realize you're mulling something over or need more time to think about it before discussing it with us, so we just end up feeling like you don't want to talk to us. Guys, we know we like to talk more than you do. We know you aren't always comfortable with emotional topics. We know you'd often rather just be quiet. But we love you and we need to connect with you through communicating. So here's what you can do. Even if you don't think you're very good at talking about feelings, it's better to do it poorly than not to do it at all. It's just like anything else. The more you practice, the easier it gets. So when a woman wants to talk, you can also ask her if there's anything specific she wants to cover. If there is, you'll now know the agenda and you can feel a little more comfortable. And if she says there's nothing in particular, she just wants to talk, believe her. She's simply trying to create some intimacy and perhaps even feel closer so she can be more in the mood later for some physical loving. Here's our second big communication secret about women. Women express our thinking and feeling process out loud. Over and over, men have complained to me, "When my wife starts to talk, she's just all over the place. I know she's smart, but she can sure sound scattered." Let's be honest, ladies, about something that baffles men. Why do women sometimes sound so confused, scattered, and dramatic when we express ourselves, yet we insist we're really clear about what we're saying? Why do we seem to him to be going on and on about nothing, yet afterwards we feel better? Are we aware that we're repeating ourselves? Do we realize that we switch subjects 20 times in 5 minutes? The answer to all these questions is found in communication secret number 2. Women express our thinking and feeling process out loud. Ladies, you know what I'm describing here. You and your husband are having breakfast, and you decide to tell him what you have planned for the day. You say, "Honey, could you make sure you leave those 2 suits in the bed because I'm going to the cleaners this morning, and I know you need them back for your trip next week, so I figure if I get them before noon and pick them up tomorrow, it'll be okay. Actually, I'm just realizing if I go to the cleaners, I might as well return the videos we rented over the weekend since it's nearby. Oh, but you didn't watch that one you wanted to, right? All right, well, I'll leave them here for another day. Oh, I almost forgot. Did I tell you Steve and Arlene called yesterday to let us know their house sold? Isn't that great? You know, that reminds me, I never wrote Arlene a thank you note for the flowers she sent. Where did I put my organizer? I know I had it here last night. Listen, anyway, about the cleaners, is there anything else you need me to drop off?" What is the woman in this scenario doing, besides driving her husband crazy? She's expressing every thought she has out loud, allowing one to flow into the other. To her partner, it may appear that she's just rambling and rambling. But as any woman knows, she's not rambling. She's doing what I call spiraling. I came up with the term spiraling after studying the differences between how men and women think. In my lectures, I like to explain it by comparing the male and female thought process to our sex organs, because it's an easy and amusing way to remember this information. Imagine for a moment the female sexual area, our womb. It's actually circular in nature, kind of like a spiral. I believe women's minds reflect the circular nature of our womb in the way they work. We think in a spiral. Here's how it works. We express something we're thinking about. Then that thought reminds us of another thought. We begin talking about that. Soon we're reminded of something we've been trying to figure out, and we switch to that topic. And round we go like this, from one thought, from one feeling to another. It may seem to the untrained observer, a male of course, that we've forgotten about what we were originally discussing, but we haven't. If you listen for a while, eventually we'll cycle back to exactly where we started, right, ladies? That's why it's called spiraling. And we may repeat this process several times in the course of one conversation. Why does communicating this way in a spiral work for women? Because we're process-oriented. Hearing ourselves talk helps women get clear on what's going on inside of us. The process of expressing our thoughts out loud actually allows us to figure out what we're thinking and feeling. However, women's habit of spiraling drives most men completely crazy. Why? Well, let me spiral back for a minute to my analogy of how men and women think. If a woman's way of thinking reflects the circular nature of the womb, then to understand a man's way of thinking, we need to think about his sex organ. So visualize it. It's straight. It points in one direction. That's why men think in a linear fashion and they like to get to the point. So when a man listens to a woman's spiral, he often assumes we're a little, disorganized in our thinking. After all, he thinks, when I talk, I say what I need to say. I get the job done. I don't wander all over the place and waste everyone's time. To a man whose mind operates by trying to get to the point, women may even sound excessive and undisciplined when we spiral. Guys, what women want you to know is that when we spiral out loud, we're not rambling, we're not confused, we're not stuck, we haven't forgotten one word of what we've said. We know we're repeating ourselves, we realize we're jumping from topic to topic, we're aware that our emotions are fluctuating. But to us, it all makes sense, because we're processing our feelings and thoughts out loud. And when we're done, we feel so much better. Other women understand this, of course. You'd never hear a woman say to her girlfriend in the middle of a long conversation, "How much longer is this going to take?" Or, "Is there a point to all of this?" Just the thought of women talking to one another like this makes me laugh. We wouldn't, because we understand spiraling. Men, however, can find the habit women have of thinking out loud to be very bothersome, and often they don't react well at all. Here are some of the ways men treat us when we're spiraling that don't work. You assume we're confused, so you talk to us like we're a child, or worse, like we're a patient in a mental hospital, explaining things in a methodical, logical voice, hoping we'll see the light. You cut us off before we really say what we're trying to say, because you think there's not going to be an end to it. Or you get frustrated because you don't hear a definitive conclusion or result that satisfies you. Those are the things that don't work. Here's what you can do instead. Talk to your partner about the concept of spiraling. If she agrees this is how she often likes to process her thoughts and feelings, try just listening with no attachment to any result. And if you're concerned that your partner's going to take up too much time spiraling through what she has to say, let her know what kind of time limit works for you rather than impatiently cutting her off. See, we'd rather have a brief conversation with you guys than none at all. Here's our third communication secret about women. Women communicate with details. Here's a true story to illustrate this point. This story was told to me by one of my best friends, Angela, about a conversation she had with her fiancé, Howard. Angela and Howard were having dinner at an upscale restaurant in New York City. The waiter brought them a bottle of wine they ordered and poured a glass for each of them. "Let's make a toast," Angela said. "Okay." "Cheers," answered Howard, clinking his glass against hers. "Howard, that's not any kind of toast," Angela complained. "It seemed fine to me," he answered. "But every time we toast, you say cheers," she explained. "It's so impersonal. A toast with your lover needs to be more intimate." Howard sighed and tried again. "Here's to you, honey." "Here's to you? What is that supposed to mean?" Angela asked. "It means, I don't know what it means," Howard replied impatiently. "It's just a little toast, for God's sake. What's the big deal?" "The big deal is that a toast should be romantic," Angela told him. "You're supposed to say sweet things to the woman you love that will make her feel good." "All right, what kind of things am I supposed to say?" Howard asked sarcastically, knowing if he didn't, Angela would tell him anyway. "Well, for instance, here's what I'd like to hear in a toast," Angela replied. "Sweetheart, I'm so lucky to be with you. You make me feel so good. I can't imagine my life without you. You're the most wonderful woman in the world. I don't want anyone else but you. I never even dreamed I could be this in love," stuff like that. Howard raised his glass, getting ready to toast Angela. Her heart began to beat a little faster in anticipation of the word she was finally going to hear. And then, with a big smile, Howard said, "Ditto." As Angela recounted the end of the story, I gasped. "No, he didn't." "Yes, he did," grumbled Angela. "What did you do?" I asked. "I looked at him in the eyes," Angela said, raised my glass, and said, "Ditto my ass." I laughed so hard when Angela relayed this story to me, it's really a true story, because it was such a perfect example of how men and women communicate differently, as well as a great illustration of our third communication secret about women. Women communicate with details. We include details in what we say to others. We want details when others communicate with us. The more details, the better. Men, however, are different. Most men simplify the exchange of information and like to cut to the chase. So they avoid details and instead give an overview. And that's all they really want from us sometimes too, an overview. For instance, when our boyfriend tells us he had lunch with a friend, we say, "Where did you eat? What did you order? What did you talk about?" We want details. If, on the other hand, we told him we'd had lunch with a friend, he'd simply say, "That's nice." The reasons for this difference go back to what we discussed earlier, that men are goal-oriented and women are process-oriented. For men, the goal of the conversation is to pass on the pertinent information. For women, the goal of communicating is the process of conversing itself. So sharing the details of our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences is a way we reach out to make dozens of little connections between us and the man we love. This is also how women communicate with each other, by sharing the details of our lives. In this exchange of information, we create intimate bonds with one another. If you listen in on a conversation between two male friends, it's a different story altogether. Many less words are spoken. Sentences are more generalized and less specific in content. The goal is achieved. The guys talk and say whatever they needed to. But it usually takes much less time than when two women talk. No details. So when you put men and women together, you often get this result. She thinks he's not talking enough. He thinks she's talking too much. This is what was happening with Angela and Howard. To Howard, toasting his fiancée with cheers was sufficient. But Angela wanted details. She wanted to hear how he felt in the moment, why he loved her, specifics that would create a special moment of intimacy between them. Obviously, ditto was not what she had in mind. And here's one of the big problems that develops when men don't understand this secret about women. You misinterpret our attempt to get you to tell us more as prying or controlling. And you become annoyed at our habit of sharing so many details in conversations and think of us as chatterboxes. Then, guys, you react by cutting us off when we're talking, acting totally disinterested, or getting irritated with us for asking you too many questions. Guys, when you conclude that women simply talk too much or want you to talk too much, you're missing the point. Remember, in our own way, we're trying to love you, to create more intimacy, to strengthen the bonds of connection between us. Women don't expect you to ever be as interested as we are in the details of various topics, or even to express yourself in as much detail as we do. But you know what? Any effort you make will be so appreciated. So when we're sharing details with you, try listening with love. You know you'd do this if you were a sports fan and a friend was recounting the events of a game. So instead of thinking, gee, she's going on and on, tune in to how we're reaching out to you and sharing ourselves. And try giving us a few more details when you communicate with us. Remind yourself we're not trying to irritate you, we're trying to create intimacy. And the closer we feel to you, the more we'll want to be physically intimate when the time is right. You know, according to statistics, most women live longer than most men. And I believe one of the reasons could be that women talk so much. I'm kind of kidding, but there's really some truth to this theory. Because women do have a secret technique we employ for releasing tension and combating stress, a technique that most men don't use. We talk about what's bothering us, and then we feel better. And this is communication secret number 4. Women use talking as a way to release tension and stress. We talk, sometimes over and over again, about our fears, our upsets, our worries, our hurts. We go over the same issues twice, 3 times, 10 times, as many times as it takes, until we feel calmer and less concerned. Our female friends understand this and would never say to us, "Didn't we talk about this yesterday?" Or, "How many times are you going to say the same thing? I heard you the first time." Men, however, don't always understand this secret about women. That's because they have a very different way of handling their tension. Whereas women externalize our worries, men often internalize theirs. We spiral through ours out loud, men keep theirs to themselves. And so guys, when your partner repeatedly talks about her worries or anxieties, you may make the mistake of concluding that we're more upset than we actually are. As we discussed earlier, guys often assume that because women repeat ourselves in talking about our upsets, we're not making any progress in resolving them. But this isn't the case. In fact, it's the opposite. For women, talking something out over and over again eventually dissipates the stuck energy around it, right, ladies? Each time we hear ourselves bring up an issue or state a fear out loud, that fear becomes a little weaker, and our understanding of it becomes a little more powerful, until suddenly it just doesn't have a hold on us anymore. This is why 2 women can spend an hour on the phone, and if a man listened in, he might think they were just complaining and not helping each other at all. But at the end of that hour, I promise you that both women would feel clearer, stronger, and less under the spell of whatever had been bothering them. When men don't understand this communication secret about women, you often make the same mistakes I mentioned in communication secret number 2 when I talked about women thinking out loud. Let me just repeat a few of them for emphasis. You become frustrated or exasperated with us, sometimes cutting off what we're saying because you feel you've heard it before. Or you listen with impatience, feeling we're taking too long to express ourselves, rather than listening with compassion and support. So guys, here's what you can do instead. The next time your woman is upset or stressed and she starts talking about what's bothering her, remind yourself that it's not really the content of what she's saying that's the issue. It's the process of running out her feelings that's going to calm her down. Focus on being there for her. Hold her hand. Put your arm around her. Listen. When she's done, tell her you hope she feels better having talked about it, that you're there for her whenever she needs to talk again. And by the way, try doing this yourself the next time you feel stressed or anxious. Maybe you'll see why we like talking so much. Finally, here's communication secret number 5. Women minimize how upset we are. You know, women are harmonizers. Because we put love first, we value harmony and we go out of our way to create it, especially with the man we love. This is why we always want to clear things up, to work on the relationship. We desperately want things to work. We want to make our mate happy. Our intention to create harmony is a good thing, but some of the effects of it are not always so good, either for us or the relationship. In order to keep the peace, women often don't express how upset we really are. We don't stand up for ourselves, and we even downplay the severity of our dissatisfaction with our mate. This isn't something we do consciously. Rather, it's a primal instinct to maintain harmony at all costs. So we may edit our unhappy feelings so successfully that we even forget about them ourselves. The problem occurs when men, and who can blame them, take us at our word and don't realize how upset we actually are about a particular situation because we minimize it when we communicate with you. For instance, we say to a man, "I've been thinking about the fact that we haven't had sex for a while." What we really mean, maybe? "For months I've been terribly unhappy about the fact that we haven't had sex." Or we say, "Honey, do you think we could get some more babysitting help for the kids?" Maybe we mean, "I'm going crazy taking care of the kids and I feel totally overworked." I know as men hear this, you're throwing up your hands thinking, "How the heck am I supposed to know she's unhappy if she doesn't tell me?" And of course you're right. It's not fair to expect you to read our minds. Women do need to learn to be more honest about our not nice feelings. But guys, you need to pay attention to what we're trying to say and not wait until we're utterly miserable to get the hint. See, men often minimize a woman's communications about her unhappiness, probably in hopes that they won't have to deal with it or that it isn't as bad as it seems. You could say this is a form of denial. If I don't pay attention to it, maybe it will go away. Men often also misinterpret serious grievances as mild complaints. You tell yourself that we still seem loving and sweet, and thereby you discount the severity of what we're trying to say. Or worse, you dismiss it as PMS. Guys, please remember what I'm about to say. It's a safe bet for you to presume that a woman is probably much more upset than she appears to be. If she says she's a little irritated, she's probably very pissed off. If she says she's a little anxious, she's probably very worried. If she says she's unhappy, she's probably miserable. One way to look at it is to think of women's complaints as smoke. When you see smoke, you better look for fire. If we say something's wrong, it's usually 10 times worse than it appears. So even if we insist that we're not that upset about something, try to get us to talk about it. Just the fact that you're willing to listen to us will make us feel so much better. Remember, when you connect rather than disconnecting, we'll feel loved, our heart will be fed, and we'll be able to let go of whatever was bothering us that much more quickly. Welcome to the next part of the program, Sexual Secrets About Women. Several years ago, a young couple came to me for help, claiming they were on the verge of divorce. The focus of their problems was their sex life. According to the wife, she had no desire to make love with her husband anymore and couldn't stand the thought of physical intimacy. Her husband, however, didn't seem to think there was a problem. As she angrily shared her feelings, he sat there with this bewildered look on his face as if he had no clue what she was talking about. I couldn't tell if he simply wasn't interested or if he truly didn't understand. After a while, I asked him to leave the room and said to the wife, "All right, woman to woman, what's the problem?" "Well, I just don't like making love with him," she explained. "I don't like what happens in bed. I just don't feel the way I want to feel. It isn't getting any better. And I just can't live like this. I'm young. I need happiness." "Why don't you like having sex with your husband?" I asked her. "It's hard to put into words," she said slowly. "It just doesn't feel right." I suggested that we get more specific in order to pinpoint the problem. "All right, when was the last time you had sex?" I asked. "Friday night," she answered. "Okay, why don't you explain to me what happened?" "Well, let's see," she began. I had just put our daughter to bed, and I was standing at the sink brushing my teeth when my husband came up behind me and kind of grabbed me and started rubbing himself against me. I thought, I guess he wants to make love. Then he started kissing my neck and acting all excited, and he led me into the bedroom and he took off my clothes, and he was touching me and he seemed really aroused, and I guess then things progressed and he was obviously getting more passionate and making all these sexual sounds, and I knew what he wanted, and I thought, all right, let's get this over with. And then he entered me and we had intercourse and he finished and it was over. All right, I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best and 1 being the worst, how would you rate that experience? She thought for a minute and said, I guess it was a 3. I remember thinking, sounds like a 3 to me too, but I didn't say anything. Now it was time for her husband to join us. I turned to him and said, as you know, your wife seems really unhappy with your sex life. She keeps telling me that, he admitted, but I can't figure out what the problem is, and when I ask her, she can't explain it to me. I asked him, how do you feel about your sexual relationship with her? I'm totally happy with it, he smiled, except I just wish she liked it too. How interesting, I thought. A wife who hates their sex life and a husband who loves it. I must be missing something. I decided to get really specific. Your wife told me you made love last Friday night. Could you tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, how you would rate the experience of making love with your wife that night? Sure, he replied with confidence. It was a 9. When his wife heard this, she turned bright red and exclaimed, a 9? It was barely a 3. See what I mean, Barbara? Her husband looked totally confused and insisted, no, it was a 9. What was going on here? It was as if they'd had 2 completely different experiences. Well, I wasn't about to give up, so I said to the husband, describe your experience of what made it a 9. Well, my wife was standing at the sink brushing her teeth. She'd just put our daughter to bed. I saw her there and felt really turned on, and I was in the mood to make love, so I started kissing her neck. Then we moved into the bedroom. I took off her clothes, and then I was touching her. I guess you'd call it foreplay, and in a little while I entered her. Soon it was over, and that was it. It was great. It was a 9. As I was listening to this man, I could tell that he really did love his wife and enjoyed making love to her. He seemed like a sweet, sincere guy, and I knew there was a piece of this I still wasn't seeing. Suddenly, I had an idea. I said to him, instead of telling me the events that happened, I did this, I touched her here, can you tell me what you were thinking and how you were feeling inside from beginning to end? He thought for a minute and said, okay, I'll try. Let's see, I was standing in the bathroom looking at my wife. I guess I was thinking about how wonderful she is with our daughter. She had just put her to bed so tenderly and sung her this song, and also how hard she works to take care of the family, and I got this rush of love and just had to go up and hold her. I looked over at his wife and noticed she suddenly was listening very intently. Go on, I told him. Then I was kind of hugging her and kissing her neck, and she smelled really fresh and clean, and her hair was so silky. I've always loved my wife's hair, and I thought to myself, gosh, she smells so delicious, and I started to get really turned on. When I glanced at his wife, I was amazed to see that she had tears in her eyes. Then the man continued. Well, I led her into the bedroom, and I started touching her body. My wife has the softest skin. It's like velvet, and she's so feminine and sexy. I've always been just crazy about her. And as I touched her, I felt like I was just melting into a puddle with each caress. Now his wife pulled out a handkerchief and began dabbing her eyes. Next, I took off her clothes and I saw her body and thought, gosh, she's so beautiful. I can't imagine anyone as beautiful. And it made me just want to be as close to her as I could. I just wanted to merge into her. Tears were pouring down his wife's cheeks as she sat forward in the couch, not wanting to miss a word. Then he said I entered her, and it was the most amazing feeling. I felt like I was home, like being with her was where I belonged, like I never wanted that moment to end. And as I had my orgasm, I felt, I love this woman so much. I worship her. How could I be this lucky? His wife, unable to contain herself any longer, leapt off the couch, threw her arms around her husband, and cried, That's a 10! That's a 10! Well, I'll never forget this moment. It contained so much revelation for this couple, and for me as well. This man truly adored his wife, but when he made love to her, he didn't express anything that was going on inside of him. He just did things on the outside to her body. Since she didn't know he was feeling all that love and intimacy, She presumed he just wanted sex, and this turned her off. As soon as she heard him describe how he was feeling, it drew her attention to his heart, and the fact that he really was making love to her and not just having sex. And that's what made it a 10. What is it that makes lovemaking a 10? It's the intimacy. It's the connection between your heart and the heart of your lover. That's why the husband said he was so happy with their sex life. He was feeling the love. He just wasn't doing a good job of sharing those feelings with his wife. That's why she didn't know how to tell him what was wrong. She liked sex. She just didn't feel as though they were making love, but couldn't articulate what she needed from him that would make the difference. To be a wonderful lover, you must learn how to make love not just with your body, but with your heart. You must learn how to let the love you feel for your partner flow into your words, into your touch, into your kiss, into everything you do, so he or she doesn't just feel you're loving their body, but that you're loving their soul as well. This is why it's called making love, because when you truly come together in this most intimate way, you're making more love between the two of you, and that love will infuse every other part of your life with joy and contentment. What does it mean to be a lover? Well, it isn't about how you perform sexually or how many sexual techniques you've learned. It isn't about how often you make love, how many different positions you've tried, or how many orgasms your partner can have. Being a lover is about the way you treat your partner all the time, not just in the bedroom. It's the way you love that person when you're taking a walk, when you're eating a meal, when you're having a conversation, and yes, when you're in bed sharing your bodies. The perfect lover is somebody whose heart is overflowing with love. In this part of the program, I'm going to share with you 5 sexual secrets about women that will help you turn mere sex into true lovemaking. What you'll hear focuses on what women want men to know about sex, all the things women told me that they want me to tell you guys. Let's face it, it's difficult for us to talk to one another honestly about sex. And I think it's even harder for women because we've been taught that nice girls don't talk about such things. We're also afraid we'll sound pushy or demanding if we tell men what we want, or maybe we'll sound like we're criticizing our partner. Sometimes we don't know how to express what we feel, or even how to say it correctly. Men, I've spent years listening to what women want men to know about sex, and the 5 sexual secrets I'll be telling you are invaluable. They'll help you be even more of a wonderful lover and partner than you already are. And you're in luck, because I'm a woman. After all, shouldn't you learn about what women want in bed from another woman and not a man? If I tell you something, you can be sure it's because I know from experience that it's true. And ladies, these secrets will help you understand more about yourselves, your body, and how to articulate your needs to the man you love. Sexual secret number 1. Women need to be turned on in their head and heart first. Here's the difference between how men and women become aroused. How a man becomes aroused. Imagine a woman starts caressing her partner. His nerve endings receive the information that an attempt at arousal is taking place, and they send the information directly to his genitals. Like magic, in a few seconds, voila, his penis responds, becoming erect. Successful arousal has taken place. Now, how a woman becomes aroused. A man starts caressing his wife as they're getting ready for bed. He's in the mood to have sex. Her nerve endings receive the information that an attempt at arousal is taking place. However, unlike in a man's body, before this information can get sent to the erogenous zones, it must pass through the emotional headquarters in her brain. So a message is relayed from the nerve endings the man is touching to the supervisor of sex and intimacy in his wife's head. Who is she, you may ask? She's the part of a woman who protects her from opening up sexually if she's not feeling safe. It's the job of the supervisor of sex and intimacy to decide if the information being received by the woman's nerve endings will get transferred on to the erogenous zones in the form of arousal or not. Well, the supervisor of sex and intimacy in this woman's brain checks all the latest reports that have been stored in her psyche. What's this? Some resentments have built up over the past week. She's been trying to talk to him about some decisions they need to make together, but he's been putting her off. Not good at all. The supervisor of sex and intimacy in the brain makes a decision. It's not a good night for this woman to have sex, maybe in a few days if he's nicer to her. So she decides not to send the sensory information onto the woman's genitals. That means, no matter what the man does to try to get his wife aroused, she won't really feel turned on. What's the woman experiencing as her husband tries to unbutton her blouse and kiss her in order to get her aroused? Not much at all. It's not that he's doing anything wrong or different from how he usually turns her on. It's just that, well, tonight, for some reason, she's just not in the mood, I guess. She pushes him off her, saying, "Honey, I'm tired. Let's just go to bed." Guys, I bet you didn't know that a woman goes through this extra step that you don't experience in the process of becoming turned on. The fact is, most men can get aroused even when they're not in the mood at all, or with someone they don't particularly like, or when they're angry at their partner, or under a variety of other unpleasant circumstances. Still, their penis functions just fine. That's because they aren't required to have their physical sensations checked for emotional issues before they become aroused. For women, it's a whole different story. Our bodies don't just respond to touch and automatically get turned on. Our head and our heart have to be turned on first. Then our bodies follow. This explains why so many women are not in the mood to have sex as frequently as their male partners. What it takes for us to be in the mood is much more than what it takes for him. This is such an important point to remember, guys, and why I always say a woman's most essential erogenous zone is our heart. When you learn how to fill a woman's heart with love, it will overflow into the rest of our body, and we will want you. Each time you take our hand, stroke our hair, or plant a kiss on our lips for no reason at all, it's as if you're saying, "I love you." We literally feel our hearts fill with contentment. And when our hearts are full, we can get in the mood to share our love with you sexually. Remember all you've heard in this program about feeding your partner's heart, using words to make her feel appreciated, making her feel safe, loved, and valued? What I've really been describing to you is emotional foreplay. Guys, this is one of women's most common complaints about men, that you skip the emotional foreplay and go directly to the physical. Here's what one woman said to me about the need for emotional foreplay. "The only time my husband touches me," she says, "is when he wants sex. I'm a very affectionate person, and I need more physical affection in general, hugging, hand-holding, cuddling. When he tries to get me turned on and hasn't touched me all week, I feel violated and used and definitely not in the mood to make love." Please, guys, listen to what women have been trying to tell you. We love you. We want to connect with you physically as much as possible. But don't wait to touch us and love us until you want to have sex. When you do, we won't be ready to receive you with the passion and acceptance you deserve. That's just the way our psyche is designed. Here's another way to understand the importance of emotional foreplay. Each of us has a door that opens up into the room of our sexual passion. A man's door has one lock. You need only one key to open his door, and that's the key of physical touch. If you caress a man in the right way, presto, his door opens and he's turned on. Women, on the other hand, have two locks on the door that leads into our sexual passion. One lock on our body and a second on our heart and mind. So a man needs two keys to open the door to our body, the key of physical touch and the key of love and intimacy, physical foreplay and emotional foreplay. Guys, the mistake you make is often trying to open our door using only one key, the physical key, and you wonder why you can't get into the sex room. You forgot the other key. If a man is really good at turning a woman on in her head and heart by making her feel loved and adored with emotional foreplay, whether with words, non-sexual affection, or the other techniques we've talked about, She may surprise him and open both doors before he even knows what's happened. You can tell you've been a success at emotional foreplay, guys, when your partner is already turned on before you even get to the physical foreplay. But most of the time, you do need to use both keys to open that door of our desire. Here's sexual secret number 2. Women need to be relaxed and free from distractions in order to desire sex. You know, men always ask me, why does it seem so complicated to get women in the mood to make love? Don't they ever just get turned on? I feel like there's some magic formula, but I don't have any idea what it is. It's easy to see why men become frustrated in their attempts to understand a woman's sexual nature. It's because we're so different from one another. Guys, I know it's difficult for you to comprehend why sex often seems like a big ordeal to women when it's so easy for you. Sexual secret number 2 will help explain this. Women need to feel relaxed and free from distractions. This need goes back to the way a woman's mind works and how different that is from how a man's mind works. See, we don't compartmentalize, and men do. Remember we talked earlier about the mind as being like a house with many rooms? Men tend to focus on whatever activity is in each room, like the love room or the work room. And when they leave that room of their awareness, they block out whatever is going on in there. Women, on the other hand, flow from room to room with all the doors open. Wherever they are in the house of their consciousness, they're acutely aware of what's going on in the other rooms of their mind. How does this apply to sex? When a man decides he might like to have sex, he simply goes to the sex room of his consciousness. He leaves behind whatever is taking place in the other rooms, work, the kids, chores, distractions. He's in the sex room, ready to go. For women, however, there is no sex room. There's the whole house of their mind, of their relationship. This is why women can't just get themselves in the mood to have sex at any time. We have a difficult time turning off whatever else is going on in our lives, in our family, in our day, and throwing ourselves into having sex. We need to be relaxed and free from distractions. See, men have an advantage over us here. They can compartmentalize their issues, blocking out what's bothering them so they can still enjoy being sexual. This isn't so easy for women. If our child is sick, it's hard for us to be in the mood. If we had a disagreement with our partner a few hours before, it's difficult for us to be in the mood. If we've left a mess in the den because we're in the middle of wrapping gifts, it's difficult for us to be in the mood. You get the picture, guys. It's really not even about you all the time. This also explains how women sometimes behave during sex. We can become easily distracted by just about anything. We'll think, what's that noise? Or, oh no, I just remembered I forgot to call the dentist's office back. A man's typical response to these comments is, as he proceeds ahead with whatever he was doing, hoping you'll forget about the interference and continue making love. The need to be relaxed in order to be in the mood for sex goes one step further. When a woman is tense, she'll have a hard time getting turned on. We know this about ourselves, so we avoid getting into a situation where we're lying there with our partner too tense to feel anything pleasurable. Often, this is why we procrastinate about having sex, or, guys, why we ask to cuddle, knowing that if we proceed with lovemaking right away, it won't turn out well. So, guys, please understand this because you deal with your tension so differently from the way women do. Men use sex as a way to deal with their stress and release tension. Women want to get rid of the stress and tension beforehand so they can get in the mood for sex. See the difference? This difference in how we handle tension causes problems in our relationships. A woman is feeling anxious or distracted, but her partner doesn't understand her need to relax or shift gears before lovemaking occurs. Many women complained about this on my surveys, particularly mothers. My husband and I fight about sex all the time, one woman said. He wants more of it, and I'm not in the mood. It's not that I don't want to make love with him, because I do. But when the kids have been throwing up all day, and the dog dug up the yard again, and I haven't had a minute to myself, it's hard for me to feel romantic. When I tell him this, he pouts as if I'm rejecting him. Why doesn't he understand that I need to feel relaxed in order to feel turned on? Guys, a woman needs to feel like a woman, and not like a mother, in order to be in the mood for sex. That means either the man needs to do something to make her feel like a woman, or she needs to do this for herself. And see, this is one of the reasons women often request that their husbands spend intimate time with them. It's not about the dinner at a restaurant, or the walk around the block, or the conversation on the couch. It's about grown-up time versus mommy time. Those moments during which a woman reclaims herself as a wife and lover are essential to her ability to be in the mood for sex. This secret about women means we need to really redefine foreplay. See, men think they know what foreplay means, kissing, caressing, touching a woman's erogenous zones. Well, guys, I'm sorry to break the news, but these things are just the tail end of foreplay. As I mentioned earlier, for women, foreplay starts hours, days, maybe even weeks before you get into bed. Anything that relaxes a woman qualifies as foreplay, since the more relaxed she is, the more open she'll be to having sex. That means offering to clean up after dinner so she can take a bath, or watching the kids while she takes a nap. Believe it or not, these are forms of foreplay. They may not seem like traditionally romantic gestures, but they will have the same effect. She'll feel her partner is paying attention to her need to relax, and she'll be grateful. Things women do to pamper themselves also qualify as foreplay. Guys, did you know that when women want to prepare for lovemaking, with rituals such as having a candlelit dinner, taking a bath, or wearing a sexy negligee, she may be doing this for herself and not you. Don't be so quick to complain about these romantic habits. The woman you love knows what she's doing. If these things make her feel sexy, support her in taking the time to do them. I have a friend who loves to shop for beautiful lingerie. Every time her husband sees her in one of the outfits she's purchased, he makes the same comment. I wish you wouldn't buy these. It's a big waste of money because they're just going to come off in 1 minute anyway. What he doesn't understand, my friend explains to me, is that I buy these for myself. The time I take to shop for them, trying the outfits on in the dressing room, putting one on after a bath at night, all these things are a form of foreplay for me. Maybe they don't turn him on, but they sure turn me on. Now here's a shocking thought. Talking about her problems is a form of foreplay for a woman. Why? Because as we heard earlier, expressing our feelings out loud helps dissipate any tension or worries we might have. So guys, when your partner wants to talk and spiral through the events of her day, don't think to yourself, do I have to listen to this? Instead think, this is foreplay. The more stress she releases, the more relaxed she'll become, and the more likely she'll be to get in the mood for sex. Sexual secret number 3. Women love to be seduced. Did you know that women's sexual fantasies often include a man who is slowly and sensitively seducing us long before the act of intercourse happens? What does it mean to seduce a woman? It means not taking for granted that a woman wants to have sex with you, even if you're married or living together. It means not showing up in the bedroom naked, getting under the covers, and immediately starting to fondle your partner's erogenous zones. It means not thinking, are you in the mood to do it tonight, is an effective way to let your sweetheart know you'd like to make love. Guys, something happens to many of you when you get into a committed relationship. You become romantically and sexually lazy. It's as if the chase is over, you know you have us, and you figure you don't have to do much anymore to keep us interested. This attitude is the formula for turning a woman off in no time. When you act as though you want us, we feel desirable and want you in return. But when you act as though you've forgotten how much you want us, we stop wanting you. The mistake men often make is getting caught up in being goal-oriented about having intercourse. You think of this as sex and everything else, making out, flirting, cuddling, as not counting. but it's the everything else that creates the experience of seduction for a woman. So when you don't see it as valuable, you're missing out on an opportunity to seduce your partner in the truest sense of the word, starting with her heart and working your way to her body. Making love is not about performing certain physical acts. It's about the exchange of sexual and emotional energy between you and your partner. Making love can mean holding your partner and giving her a few sweet kisses. Making love can mean stroking her body, noticing that she's turned on and saying, "Too bad we don't have more time, but I can't wait to see you later." Making love can mean calling her on the phone, telling her how sexy she looked in bed that morning. When you expand your concept of what making love is, you will find innumerable opportunities to seduce your partner. Sexual secret number 4. Women hate to be rushed. Ladies, I know you've had the following experience. You're in bed with your partner, and you're both in the mood to make love. He kisses you passionately for a few minutes, and then his hands make their way to your breasts, where he proceeds to stimulate you intently and with great concentration. He spends a few brief minutes on each breast, and then one of his hands jumps down to your vagina, into which he quickly inserts his finger, determining how ready you are. If you appear sufficiently lubricated, all foreplay ceases, and he gets on top of you so his penis can enter you. If you're not wet enough, he goes back and repeats steps 1 and 2. A few more kisses, a few more tweaks of the nipples, then he uses his finger to check again. Nope, not quite done. A little more kissing, breast stimulation, and then once again, that finger probes for moisture. If he doesn't come up with any, the sequence is repeated over and over again. Years ago, I named this maddening procedure checking the roast. It's a terrible habit men have when they're rushing in bed, hoping to get us ready for penetration. We're lying there thinking, is he kidding? This is what he calls foreplay? And each time he checks the roast, we become increasingly tense and pressured to produce a result, thus ensuring that it's going to take even longer. Now, I know most men have heard somewhere in their sexual education that women take much longer than men to become fully sexually aroused. This is true. Men can be fully aroused and ready for action in a matter of seconds. Women take, well, we take as long as we take. It's different every time and depends on all the factors we've been discussing. Often, guys, you forget this vital piece of information about a woman's body and you get lazy and impatient. Making love becomes about preparing a woman for penetration rather than about celebrating each other's bodies and sharing your love. Frankly, women hate when we feel you rushing and attempting to get us ready. Guess what, guys? If that's your focus, you'll fail, because you'll only be using one of those keys we talked about earlier, the physical key, and forgetting the really important key to the heart that, to be blunt, will produce more lubrication than any technique ever could. Listen, you wouldn't put your car into 4th gear directly from 1st, would you? No, the car would stall. So why would you take your lover for a ride without warming her up first by running through all her gears? I'm referring to true sexual foreplay. Not the perfunctory kind I just described, a few kisses, a little breast action, check the roast to see if she's done. I'm talking about really loving and worshiping your partner's body. On behalf of women everywhere, I say to men, slow down. Stop approaching having sex with your lover as if you're trying to get it over with. This isn't a race. You definitely don't get extra points for finishing quickly. In fact, the opposite is true. The longer you take, the better it will be for her and for you too. Sexual secret number 5. What a woman's clitoris would tell you if it could talk. Most women I know have had that awfully frustrating, teeth-gnashing experience of lying there while our beloved diligently and passionately touches our vagina in the wrong place for a long, ever so long time. We squirm hopefully to the left, to the right, forwards, backwards, hoping that simply by the process of elimination, his untrained fingers will land on our anxiously waiting clitoris. But no, somehow in spite of all of our yogic contortions, he stubbornly misses just where he should be touching by a few centimeters, and annoyingly grinds into some anonymous spot on our female geography, all the time wondering why we aren't writhing in ecstasy. At other times, our partner does find our clitoris, but touches it in a way that is guaranteed to be totally ineffective, not to mention frustrating. Why is he doing that to it, we wonder to ourselves, as we lie there feeling like we want to scream, and not with ecstasy. What could possibly make him think that would feel good? Do I have to draw him a map with detailed instructions? Actually, the answer is yes. Because, ladies, men don't have a clitoris, so they don't know what it feels like or how it works, and unless some bold woman has educated them, they have no way of figuring it out for themselves. Guys, if our clitoris could talk, and I know this is a weird analogy, but bear with me, the first thing it would say to you would be, I am not a miniature penis, so don't treat me like one. Here's the deal. Men often find the vagina quite mysterious. After all, most of its essential parts are hidden from view, and there seems to be a lot going on down there and so many areas to choose from. Should he touch here or here? Does this feel good? Does that do anything for us at all? Exactly where is the right spot? Why all this confusion? Well, think about a penis for a moment. It's big, it sticks out, it has a huge surface area, and you can touch it just about anywhere and it'll feel fantastic to the owner. Now, your man knows that. In fact, he's probably touched himself many times, usually without focusing on any particular spot. Pleasuring himself doesn't require much skill, to be honest. He just kind of grabs the whole thing and he's a happy camper. This explains why men often think of the whole vagina as a differently shaped penis. They figure everywhere on it feels good, just like their own sexual organ, and proceed to touch a woman in ways that do absolutely nothing for her. Oh, how women wish this were true, that we had this big, circular sexual organ, and that every spot on it was as sensitive as a penis. But sadly, this is not the case. All things are not created equal, and unlike the generous size and convenient layout of a man's very sensitive penis, most, if not all, of the sexual sensation that produces pleasure for a woman is focused in a tiny, tiny, temperamental piece of flesh known as her clitoris. Now, since you don't have one, guys, here's a brief guide to the clitoris I think you'll find useful. Imagine for a moment that your penis was only 1/16 of an inch big. I know it's a frightening thought, but bear with me. It's partially hidden under folds of skin, and even when that skin is pulled away, you can't really see the whole thing. Now imagine that, unlike a penis, this minuscule sexual organ doesn't always enjoy being touched. In fact, sometimes when it's fondled, it actually hurts. At other times, it feels numb. And yes, sometimes it feels wonderful, but only when it's stroked in a certain way. Welcome to the confusing, mysterious world of a woman's clitoris. I highly recommend that you become well acquainted with the clitoris. Why? Because that's where all the action is for a woman in terms of intense sexual pleasure. Guys, you can't imagine how sensitive and complex the clitoris is. Even we don't always know how it's going to respond, so of course it's going to be even more difficult for you. But here are just a few basics to remember. First, don't treat it like you would a penis by grabbing it or applying way more pressure than most women like or can stand. Don't press it like a button, hoping for some magic result. The only response you'll get will be your woman wanting to smack your hand away. In the beginning, indirect touching is best. Direct pressure on the clitoris isn't what creates the most pleasurable sensation in the beginning. You can stroke the sides, you can graze your fingers over the top, you can circle around it. Ask your partner how she likes to be touched. Better yet, have her show you. Hopefully she's an expert on it. And no matter what you think you've learned with previous partners, each woman is unique, so you have to start from scratch. Next, memorize this phrase. Variety in the beginning, consistency at the end. A big mistake men make, whether with their hands or their mouth, is thinking they're supposed to do the exact same thing over and over and over from the beginning. Most women find this annoying. It seems the clitoris responds best when it's exposed to a variety of touches or sensations. Don't just stick to one technique from the moment you make contact. However, although changes are good in the beginning, they're irritating and frustrating towards the end when a woman approaches orgasm. Rhythm is the key for women when it comes to, well, coming. If your partner seems to be approaching orgasm, don't keep changing what you're doing at that point, please. Find something that seems to be working and stick to it. Have you ever noticed that a woman will grab your hand or grip your head into place as she nears climax? Men think these are gestures of passion, but what we're trying to tell you is, don't move, keep doing what you're doing. There's nothing more frustrating than being almost at the point of orgasm and the guy decides to be creative and change his technique. Forget about everything you've learned, guys, watching X-rated movies where a woman is in some exotic position having a screaming orgasm. This is totally unrealistic. For most women to come, the clitoris has to somehow be stimulated either directly or indirectly. Although about a third of women say they are sometimes able to experience orgasm just from intercourse, the majority of us need clitoral stimulation along with thrusting. Being a great lover means figuring out ways to keep your woman's clitoris involved during intercourse. That means using your hands or your body to keep constant pressure on it. One method that really works is called the coital alignment technique. American psychotherapist Edward Eichel came up with this term in the early 1990s based on his observation that the in-and-out thrusting model of intercourse was not what helped women achieve orgasm, but that what was necessary was a position that put constant rhythmic pressure on the clitoris. With a man on top and inside of her, the woman presses her clitoris against the pubic bone region right at the base of his penis. The man's full weight is on her body, keeping his pelvis pressed in place against her clitoris. Rather than moving in and out of her all the way, he moves with her, maintaining constant contact with a gentle, rocking motion. When you maintain a steady, even pace with this technique, it's much easier to achieve orgasm for the woman, and it also helps a man last longer. There are so many more secrets about a woman's body and sexuality that men can learn. These are just a few of the ones women asked me to share in this program. Of course, guys, the best teacher will be the woman you love. Tell her you want to know everything there is to know about adoring her body. Tell her you want to master the art of worshiping her. Let your lovemaking become a doorway into a new kind of sexual experience, where mere physical pleasure turns into emotional and physical ecstasy. The journey of this program is almost finished. Now, with all you've learned, another journey awaits you, the journey of love. Your journey of love will require great emotional courage, stubborn perseverance, and uninterrupted faith. Sometimes on the journey of love, you'll feel lost and not be sure where you're heading. Sometimes you will feel tired and disheartened and wonder if you should even have started the journey in the first place. But on the journey of love, there will also be great moments of joy, profound revelation, and unimaginable sweetness, as love transforms you like nothing else can. And one day, you will realize that through all of its ups and downs, your journey has taught you that your capacity to love is way beyond anything you could have ever imagined it to be. And, in the end, that love you feel in your heart will be the true gift and the ultimate reward for having been a traveler on the sacred and mysterious path of love. Do not give up on love, dear friends, no matter what.
What women want men to know, the ultimate book about love, sex, and relationships for you and the man you love, was written and read by Barbara DeAngelis. It was abridged for audio by Allison Chernow. The recording engineer was Michael Jones. Editing by Stan Bush. Post-production by One Louder. The associate producer was Will Carlino. The director was Karen Perlman. What Women Want Men to Know was produced by Linda Ross. This has been a presentation of Simon & Schuster Audio.